season of the Sun Valley Writers Conference Conversations. And I just felt like a wonderful capstone to have him be that Decemberfest program, and he was gracious enough to sit for a longer conversation, and also will have some wonderful gifts. He signed some books if you're interested in purchasing those for gifts for the holiday season. All the Light We Cannot See, which won the Pulitzer Prize, and Cloud Cuckoo Land. We even have some original artwork that was done to help you get through the storyline of Cloud Cuckoo Land, which is a little complex but wonderful. I'll be talking with him about that story and just coming up, and about what it was like to be on the set of the Netflix adaptation of All the Light We Cannot See. He and his son went to Budapest this past summer to do that. So it's a really interesting interview. We go through both books and also what Idaho means to him. And I have to say at this point what you mean to us. Because without you, and of course the Laura Moore Cunningham Foundation, which also underwrites Dialogue and many of our other local programs, we could not put this type of local programming on the air. Many stations around the country, many PBS stations do not have as much local programming as we do. Dialogue, Idaho Reports, Outdoor Idaho, Science Trek, Idaho Experience. You're going to see several of those programs tonight. That's really unique, and it happens because you contribute. So take a look at the number on the screen, 1-800-980-4788. Make these young people's night worthwhile. Keep them busy, right? Call in, make a pledge. It's really not that difficult. We're also one of the few stations that doesn't come to you many days a year, which is important. So they're here waiting to take your call, and any amount really that you can give is appreciated. And for $60 or above, you get that passport membership.
That's right, and we'll talk a little bit more about that.
We'll talk about that. But I just hope that you enjoy this interview. I've interviewed Tony Doerr first 20 years ago, almost 20 years ago now. So to come back and talk with him about winning the Pulitzer and all the things that have happened since then was really, really fun. So that's coming up at 5 to 6. Then we've got Idaho Experience, a new documentary on the Sunshine Mine disaster at 6 p.m. to 7. And then Outdoor Idaho, a wonderful documentary about the Bitterroot mountain region
so
in
many
Idaho.
local programs tonight. And Marcia's very humble, but we do wonderful work, and you are the reason, because you support so many programs, so many opportunities at Idaho Public Television. So I hope you enjoyed this program, and we will step in and talk with Marcia a little bit during the program. And right now we'll go into the program. I wanted to say thank you to Edwards for decorating the set tonight as well.
Yeah,
enjoy.
Presentation of Dialogue on Idaho Public Television is made possible through the generous support of the Laura Moore Cunningham Foundation, committed to fulfilling the Moore and Bettis family legacy of building the great state of Idaho, by the Friends of Idaho Public Television, and by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, with additional funding from the James and Barbara Semino Foundation.
My goal is always to not sleepwalk through life. And so when I'm building sentences, I try to skirt cliches, because I feel like cliche is a way to kind of sleepwalk through a sentence.
Coming up, a special in-depth conversation with best-selling Idaho author Anthony Doerr. I talk with him about his newest book, Cloud Cuckoo Land, and he tells us what it was like to be on the set of the Netflix series based on his Pulitzer Prize-winning novel, All the Light We Cannot See. It's all part of our 15th anniversary edition of Conversations from the Sun Valley Writers Conference on Dialogue. Stay with us. Hello and welcome to Dialogue. I'm Marcia Franklin. I first interviewed Idaho author Anthony Doerr in 2003. At the time, he was getting rave reviews for his first book, The Shell Collector, which had been published the year before. Fast forward 20 years and 5 more books, and Anthony Doerr is one of the most recognizable names in American fiction. His many honors include the Rome Prize, the Story Prize, 5 O. Henry Awards, 4 Pushcart Prizes, the National Magazine Award, and, oh yes, a Pulitzer Prize for fiction. The Pulitzer was awarded for All the Light We Cannot See, Doerr's 2014 blockbuster novel about 2 young people during World War II. It spent more than 200 weeks on the New York Times bestseller list, and Netflix is adapting it into a limited series. In 2021, Dorr published another novel, Cloud Cuckoo Land, which was a finalist for the National Book Award. Its sprawling and intersecting storylines take us from the 15th century to the 22nd century, from an ox herder in Constantinople to a girl alone on a spaceship. At the helm is Dorr, whose fascination with time travel is all part of a mission to learn as much as possible in his life. Squarely back in the 21st century, I caught up with him at the 2022 Sun Valley Writers Conference. We talked about what fuels his work and a rather eerie scenario in his latest book that ended up paralleling real life. Well, first of all, thanks for being here. It's great to see you. I looked it up, it's been 8 years since we did an interview together last.
It's great to see you, Marcia. Thanks for having me.
All the Light We Cannot See was out, but you hadn't won the Pulitzer yet.
Okay.
So a lot has happened.
That's right. 8 years ago. That makes sense.
Yeah. I've just gotten grayer, but you've won a Pulitzer and you published
and
another
I lost
book.
the last shreds of my hair.
What an amazing 8 years it's been for you.
Thanks. Yeah, I mean, mostly it's just that my kids got older and I got older. But yeah, of course, tons of amazing things happened. And yeah, people just kept reading that novel that I wrote and just so grateful for that, and also managed to find time to work on a new one.
Yeah. Help me with the numbers here. Are you at 15 million copies of
I don't
All
know
the Light?
where. That was in the New York Times, but I don't know. I try not to look at that stuff. That's like the publisher's realm. But then, of course, you know, the book, my first books, like The Shell Collector, I think came out in 8 foreign countries. All the Light We Can't See came out in 41 foreign countries. So I had 41 foreign publishers. So just even managing that email is a lot.
Well, the most important thing I wanted to know, I think, aside from the numbers and all that, is when you look at that book, what are you most proud of now, all these years later, now that it's been out in the world?
Oh gosh, I rarely think in those terms. I still see like the little mistakes I made or little moments where you're clumsy and you're like, oh, I should have researched that more. I think what I'm most proud of, we can talk about it today, is, you know, Netflix is adapting it into a limited series. We used to call those mini series when we were young, but now for some reason they're called limited series. 4 one-hour episodes. Maybe the last one will be a little more than an hour. And together, we all kind of work to try to find an actor to play this character, Marie. There are 2 kind of main protagonists. One's Werner, a German boy, and one's Marie-Laure, this French girl. And we looked to find an actor that was visually disabled who could play her. And we found an amazing person.
Jackpot.
Just amazing, yeah. Her name is Aria. And we found about 20% of the scenes are going to be played by a younger version of her, a 7-year-old named Nell from Wales, and she's really sweet. So watching her work too has been really moving. So I think maybe right now the thing I'm most proud of is this opportunity that these 2, this young woman and this little girl, will have to kind of be an example to so many kids who maybe wouldn't have had these opportunities 30 or 40 years ago to play a big role in a big Netflix show. It's pretty cool.
Aria, I read about her and she has a TEDx talk. I watched it. Wow, you know, she's been an advocate for the visually impaired since she was quite young.
She's awesome.
And she is studying ancient Greek and rhetoric. I mean, as we segue to the next book, how perfect could that be? Because your next book involves ancient Greece.
Yeah, it's just been wild. I mean, you know, they did a worldwide search. So they had casting directors in like New Zealand and in Asia and in London, and they find her and she's in Rhode Island, or she's from Rhode Island. I think she's going to Penn State to get her PhD. And her mom, you know, they had read the book, but it was years before, because the book came out in 2014. And her mom's like, you know, you really should audition. And what's so amazing is she had tried to be in a play as a young girl, and she's having trouble finding her marks, and they just said, you know, this isn't going to work. And so I think she just feels like this wonderful vindication, like I get to pursue this dream I had. And
yeah, that's amazing. And when will that come out?
We don't know quite yet. So my son Owen and I were just in Hungary. It's about 81 days of shooting altogether, some in France, and they did about 60 of them in Budapest in Hungary. And so Owen and I got to go for a few days, and it was just so amazing. I mean, first, you know, on the way there, I'm like, how big is this going to be, Owen? He's like, it's big, Dad. I'm like, I don't think it's going to be that big. But, you know, there's like 10 semi-trucks, trailers, just when you pull in, all full of cables and stuff. There's one that's just bathrooms for the crew. There's one that's like just for, to cook food for everybody. There's like trailers for the producers and Mark Ruffalo, and you're like, oh, wait, maybe this is kind of big. Everybody's masked up, and they've got all this really strict COVID protocols, because if somebody gets COVID, and shooting shuts down, the money just bleeds away. So it made me first so grateful that I work in such an inexpensive form of storytelling, where if I want to blow up a building, it's free, basically. And, it's just like everything they do is, there's so many people on the clock. They have these night shoots with they've got 150 extras all in German outfits, and they've got tanks and old trucks. And right now they're in France filling streets with rubble, like the streets of this town in the south of France. So just to do these scenes, like post-bombing scenes where these characters are walking through rubble. So as a novelist, you don't have to quite worry so much. You just say, there was rubble in the streets, period. Really, I was just in awe of the teamwork nature of it. Writing can be such a solitary thing that it made me a little jealous, because they really were all kind of moving together in the same direction. And sometimes when you're feeling a little tired, like the talents and skills of somebody beside you can carry the project forward. And when you're writing a novel, it's like when you're tired and the thing doesn't move forward that day, you're the only one.
Well, I mentioned Aria, who's not only the actress, but becoming an expert in ancient Greek and rhetoric, which provides me a nice segue to your current book, Cloud Cuckoo Land, because in fact, the title and much of it derives from an interest in ancient Greece. Talk to people about the title and where it emanates from.
Yeah,
the
absolutely.
birds and Aristophanes.
Yeah, Aristophanes. Good job, Marcia. So maybe longtime viewers of your show remember, I was really lucky. In 2004, my wife gave birth to twin boys, and we went from Boise, Idaho, all the way to Rome, to the American Academy of Rome. This is a prize you don't apply for in literature. They just like lightning bolt put this letter in our mailbox. Hey, would you like? It came on the day my wife gave birth to these babies. And they were like, hey, would you like to spend a year in Rome? We'll pay for your apartment and feed you. And so thankfully she said yes. And so when the boys were 5 months old, we traveled there and had a year. And that was really the first time for me to realize that so many of the classics have been lost. Like we only have a third of the texts written by Aristotle, for example. Sophocles wrote 100-some plays. I think we only have 7. Sappho, the famous poet, we think she wrote maybe 10,000 lines of poetry. We only have 650 lines of that poetry left. Time, earthquakes, mold, floods, tyrants, totalitarians, zealots. There's so many things that work to erase manuscripts from the world. And so really anything that provides cultural continuity, that keeps that thread from the present all the way back to pre-Christ times, is so amazing to me, so miraculous that some things can survive through all these generations. So I always, this is a long time ago at this point, but I always thought there's something in this. When I was, I think 14, maybe 15, my grandmother moved in with us. She had been diagnosed with Alzheimer's disease, but this was the 80s. I was a kid, I'd never heard the phrase before, but I was really affected by watching dementia steal everything that she was over time. She lost her ability to remember who we were. She could still beat me at gin rummy, but she didn't know who I was. Or, she lost her ability to feed herself, eventually care for herself. So I think all through some part of my subconscious, all through my adult life has been kind of both afraid and aware of the fragility of memory. And there's some connection that I've made subconsciously between the erasure of texts over time, because really what is a book? It's a human memory that's kind of written down as a life. And so when the text dies, it's almost like a second death, So I knew as I was finishing All the Light, I kind of wanted to tell a story that had something to do with that cultural thread and cultural transmission through time. I finished All the Light in 2014. I'm starting this new book around the time that a presidential candidate is going around the United States leading crowds in chants, build that wall, build that wall. And I'm reading about, I had all these texts about the history of walls and defensive walls, and a lot of them would mention the walls of Constantinople. And I'm not sure about your high school history classes, but my high school history class, at least in Western history, it would kind of get to the fall of Rome, and then it would basically leap to the Renaissance. Yeah. and we didn't cover Byzantine history at all. I didn't even know what Byzantium was. So I love to use my work as a way to try to rectify various ignorances. I will die with thousands upon thousands of them, but this was a chance to learn more about something I didn't know about. And the more I read about the walls of Constantinople, the more amazed I became. They stood for 1,100 years without falling to a siege. So they were kind of like the preeminent defensive technology of the medieval world. And 23 sieges came over the centuries and broke themselves against these walls and couldn't get through. There's this 4 miles of walls plus these sea walls, triple walls. The inner wall was huge. There's like a killing field in between. There's a moat in front. And it allowed this empire to accumulate insane wealth. The best example I can give is that there were 3 acres of gold mosaic in the vaulting of the Hagia Sophia at one point. And of course, slaves and amber. It was really the crossroads of Europe and Asia. But once I learned that books were a big part of this, there was a really healthy book culture. And at certain times, girls were encouraged to become literate. There were private libraries, monastic libraries, and there were a couple of big imperial libraries. We don't know all the details about them, but there are some theories that certain points, in maybe the 500s, 600s, the Imperial Library of Constantinople had 125,000 volumes. These are handwritten manuscripts. And meanwhile, gunpowder is just being adopted as this really potent weapon to finally bring down this old technology of walls. So this young sultan, his name was Mehmed II, 19 years old, recognizes both the physical and psychological potential of building these huge weapons to knock down the unbreachable walls of Constantinople. And these last manuscripts could spill out. I knew that's when I thought, I've got a story to tell here. I can tell the story of one old book leaving the walls of Constantinople, and who would save that, and who would preserve it, and how might that book reach today?
The title of your book, Cloud Cuckoo Land, reflects back on ancient Greece and Aristophanes and the birds, part of the birds had this cloud cuckoo land, this kind of in between earth and heaven place, and you incorporated that not only into the title, but into a text that reappears throughout the book. I kind of was thinking about it as almost like the maypole, so that the characters are all involved with this text that you invented, but really is referential to this cloud cuckoo land that Aristophanes wrote about.
Yeah.
And cloud cuckoo land in your mind is a placeholder for what? Is it,
Great question. So it's in Greek, it was like nephelokokouia, and it was, this phrase has trickled into contemporary English all the way from ancient Greek. It's 2,400 years old. This play did survive the centuries, called The Birds, and these two kind of fools decide to leave Athens because there's too many lawyers, and found a better city in the sky. It's one of the first Western utopias, Cloud Cuckoo Land, and the idea is that it's halfway between the realm of the humans on the ground and the gods up in the sky, and they can intercept messages. And of course, like most utopian narratives, they get it going and it starts out great, but then of course the city doesn't work out quite as they plan. One starts eating the birds that help them build the city. But I love the idea of utopian stories. As I was working on this book, really the world started to feel a little bit dystopian, and every time I go downstairs, my kids are taking in dystopian narratives on the TV. I just felt like every Marvel movie, there's just like another planet explodes, superheroes zipping here and there, and I just wondered, like, what is it about dystopian narratives that's really drawing these kids in, including a lot of the books they were reading. So I thought, what is it about humans that we tell stories about utopias? What do utopias represent about hope? And what kind of exercise is it for a person to try to imagine a better place, and how important is that to our psyches? So for me, each of the characters finds this text called Cloud Cuckoo Land, which is an invented story. I just invented 24 pieces of a story by a real writer. His name was Antonius Diogenes, the same initials as mine, and apparently he was a really playful writer. All his work is lost, but we have a review written of his book from the 9th century by a librarian, a patriarch in Constantinople, that really argued that this book he wrote, which is called The Wonders Beyond Thule, was really inventive, really playful. It sounds almost like a Nabokov novel or a Borges novel. And it's a shame that all his work is lost, but I thought, I'm going to invent a work that he could have written. I'm going to call it Cloud Cuckoo Land and use it as a way to kind of explore hope and distant places in each of the 5 main characters in my book. I'm really also exploring materialism and kind of acceptance in this book. I feel like this was my middle-aged book in a lot of ways. You know, capitalist culture teaches us over and over that we'll be happy if we just get one more thing. If you and I can get to Bora Bora, Marcia, then we'll be happy. If you and I can just buy this new pair of jeans, we'll be a little bit happier, a little bit younger. And, you know, I'm trying to understand all the time that this is not a path to happiness. And so I think we're often told, like, if you can just get to this Cloud Cuckoo Land place, then, you know, you'll finally be happy. And really I feel like my journey and especially maybe the pandemic helped with this was to accept you don't always have to go all the way around the world to find like a moment of beauty. You don't have to be on the Amalfi Coast necessarily. Sometimes just seeing like the snow geese come squawking overhead when all the planes were gone in March of 2020, and you know, you're just in the foothills in Boise and you're like, I can hear those snow geese and they're like a mile above my head. There were all these little moments of transcendent beauty, sometimes just sitting in your backyard. Obviously, we were privileged enough to be healthy and not have COVID and be able to buy our food. And I understand some people were under immense stress at that time. But there were a lot of silver linings to that moment. And those were the months I was finishing the book. And I really felt like I was trying to come to a place of like, home is Cloud Cuckoo Land, really. And ultimately, you know, all odysseys are kind of circular shaped, and so I'm playing a lot with circles in the book, like leaving home and returning home. And so for me, at least at the conclusion of the book, I try to get the reader to the place like, let's accept this place. Like, there is no planet B. This is our planet, and it's undergoing multiple existential crises at once, not just climate change, but this biodiversity crisis where we're losing so many wild creatures, so many wild insects. We've lost like millions and millions of birds from the United States alone. So just what does it mean to be growing up in this time, trying to get each of those characters to ask that, and what does it mean to kind of dream of a better place, and then ultimately accept, like, this is as good as it's going to get right here, right now. However, there's something so beautiful about our willingness, or like our need to go explore and to push ourselves, and I'm really also trying to reach for that. Almost all the characters also encounter the Odyssey at some point, the story of Odysseus, you know, going so far away and taking 10 years to return home. There's something about humans that we just love to explore and learn and chase the distances.
I really like that comment. There's something about humans that we just love to explore and learn and chase the distances. And I feel it ties into public television, actually.
I think you're
because
absolutely right.
PBS and Idaho Public Television give you those opportunities, whether it's through our travel programs or literature, to chase those distances.
Yeah.
So it was really, really fun to interview Tony Doerr, or Anthony Doerr, I guess I should say.
What a delightful man.
Incredibly delightful, very modest, very humble. I mean, here's a man who's won the Pulitzer Prize. Now Netflix is adapting his book into a limited series, and yet he's totally down to earth. Mm-hmm. And I talked with him actually in the second part of this interview about what Idaho means to him.
Oh, good.
As well.
I'm looking forward to that.
And we're going to hear a really, really kind of eerie coincidence that he wrote into the book that ended up being kind of like real life with the pandemic. So,
well, speaking of eerie coincidences, we have noise in the studio tonight being made by the Boise State University School for Public Service students.
yes.
And that's not eerie, although all the bells, are those phone calls? I hope the phone calls are coming in.
We want to keep them busy. These folks have given up a precious Sunday night when they could be doing homework.
Well, Marcia, homework.
And they're here to take your calls. So if you like this type of programming, please do give us a call at the number on your screen.
Yep.
And any amount is appreciated.
Any amount at 1-800-980-4788 or idahoptv.org. You can also text GIVE. Text the word GIVE to that 1-800 number, and we'll send you a link back where you can do a donation.
And we've got some great gifts for you if you can give at the $10 every month level. Hey, how much do you pay for a latte every week? It's really not very much to get a signed copy of All the Light We Cannot See, which is the Pulitzer Prize winning novel by Anthony Doerr. We also have some copies of Cloud Cuckoo Land, signed by Mr. Doerr, that he graciously did that, and he has signed this really interesting piece of artwork that was made to give you a little map to help you with Cloud Cuckoo Land, because it's a bit of a
Aha.
complex story.
You-
So somebody made this map, and we've got some other goodies in the books as well.
My
so
wife was reading the book. She could have used that
Yes.
that map.
Yes.
She said, "This is really this. I need a map." So I may just take a
So
picture
call
of that.
in, and I know that pledge time, festival time is we're slightly interrupting your evening, but really compared to other PBS stations around the country, and you know this better than anyone because you know the muckety mucks
all-
at the top. We do very, very little of this, and so really it is our small amount of time to come to you and ask for your support for this type of local programming. We're very unique in doing it.
We are unique, and the muckety mucks at the top, as well as everyone in the muckety muck pool. This is we try to keep it limited, just so we can ask you for your support, so we can bring these great local
Phones are
productions,
quiet.
as you can
I
see
feel
tonight.
sad.
Well, don't worry, they'll
I
heat
feel
up. They'll heat
sad.
up. Just make that call to
Call in, make me
1-800.
feel better.
980-4788 or go to idahoptv.org. Before, though, that we go on any longer,
Yeah.
we want to hand it over
Yes.
to Tina
Yes.
and Andy, another guest in the studio.
Thank you, Jeff. Hello, I'm Tina Wright with Idaho Public Television. I am joined with guests in the studio. We are actually almost back to normal. Andrew Giacomazzi, the Associate Dean for the School of Public Service at Boise State, and his students are here this evening to take your call. And Andy, speaking of, I think, education, entertainment, inspiration, this book has it all. Your students have it all. You guys are here, giving up your Sunday night, joining us tonight, and tell us a little bit about why you always love to come and talk with us here.
Oh my gosh, this is, I think, our 6th or 7th time doing
Uh-huh.
this, Tina, and we just enjoy it so much. One of the things that strikes me is, the educational mission that Idaho Public Television has, along with Idaho public institutions like Boise State and the School of Public Service. And, it's just so awesome to be able to really realize the educational piece of the programming at Idaho Public Television. I'm thinking of our students right now who are, a lot of them are political science majors, and the great programs that are on Idaho Public Television, like Idaho Reports and Outdoor Idaho for our environmental science
Right.
students. And it really just makes a big difference that it's not just about little kids getting the education on PBS, but it also, as they become young adults, they can continue to watch PBS and especially our local station here and get some really great programming. We love it.
What a great segue into lifelong learning.
Yes.
That's what we're all about here at Idaho Public Television. That's what you as viewers give to us, and we hope we give that back to you as well. So give us a call tonight, and we'll keep these students busy at 1-800-980-4788. You can go online to idahoptv.org, or you can text the word GIVE to that same 800 number, and we'll send you a link that you can donate online. And we'll talk a little bit more, Andy. We'll get kind of more deep into some of the things that mean a lot to you and your students as we go into our local
Love it.
programming
Thank
this
you.
evening. But right now I'm going to throw over to Jeff again. He has a special guest as well.
All right, thanks, Tina, Andy. So I'm here with Israel, owner of Qdoba here in the Treasure Valley, has multiple outlets. Thank you for being here tonight.
No, thank you for the invitation again. Once again, this year, once again, I'm very pleased that I'm here. And all these volunteers over here, let's give you a round of applause to them too as well. And make sure you guys call that number, 1-800-980-4788, and let's make it a donation.
I can go home now. He's doing all my work for me. So now you had talked a little earlier about why you watch public television. You
Well,
watch the kids shows.
Yes, exactly. We watch our kids shows with my granddaughter, Melody, and we usually, watch George and Sesame Street and so on, So very pleased to watch the Idaho television, here.
Wonderful. And thank you for being here tonight. Thank you for bringing us sustenance so we can keep these kids working because there's going to be more phone calls coming in throughout the night. So, local programming is really what we're here for tonight. We're also going to have a national program, but your your dollars of donation help us bring these shows all year long, whether it's local productions, national productions, or the kids shows. Your phone calls really help us. And if you call in tonight, you can receive a gift for your efforts. But just give us a call at 1-800-980-4788 tonight. And this is the last night of our Decemberfest. We come to you just twice a year, Decemberfest, and in March. We're going to try to keep this short and sweet and simple, so give us a call now before the end of tonight. Now, we also want to, coming up tonight, later on will be Idaho Experience, the Sunshine, Remembering the Sunshine Mine Disaster. It's a very well done show by Bill Manny, Pat Metzler, and Aaron Coons also worked on that. And Outdoor Idaho, In the Shadow of the Bitterroots, and then later on, James Taylor, One Man Band. So we want to tell you that that's coming up tonight. We also want to thank, I think, Qdoba again. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
No, thank you for inviting us, and you know, hopefully you guys enjoy the delicious food.
Oh, we will. And so here comes the second half of Dialogue with Anthony, Dora, and Marcia. See you in a bit.
One of your characters is out into the future. You start the book with her and end the book with her, Constance. I don't know if that's a reference to Constantinople too, but her name is Constance. And she's on a spaceship, and originally with her parents, but there's a virus, actually.
Yeah, it's not too big of a spoiler.
And so she ends up alone with this Siri-like character, Sybil, an artificial intelligence character that she's interacting with. And I have to say that, I don't know if you were presaging or, you know, how this happened, but you've got a minor character in this story called Omicron.
Right.
And a lot of people coming across that were like, woo!
Right.
And the character's talking about the virus. I know you turned your manuscript in around the time of COVID starting.
Way
Is
before.
that a coincidence that?
So the book is told in 24 parts, and when the Odyssey and the Iliad were first written down, you know, they were transmitted verbally for centuries, like these walking Netflix guys and gals would walk into towns and deliver from memory whole segments of these epic poems. It's incredible. When they were finally written down, you know, maybe 2,600 years ago in the Library of Alexandria, they were codified and broken into 24 pieces, one for every letter of the ancient Greek alphabet. And so I also had heard that Antonius Diogenes, the writer who I invented his lost book, that his book, The Wonders Beyond Thule, was broken into 24 parts. So I thought, okay, there's my structure. I'm going to use one section for each of the letters of the Greek alphabet. So all around me I have like alpha through omega, and there's Omicron, means little o. There's omega, big O, and Omicron, micro, little o. And so often I would just be pulling little winks and hints. There's a lot of little Easter eggs and winks to the reader in this book. I was just like, oh, okay, I need a name of a character in the future. So I thought, okay, I'll try Omicron. And then later, like it's 12 months after the book comes out, or no, it's maybe 6 months after the book comes out, everywhere you see every headline is Omicron. Crazy.
Yeah, because it's not only that you had an Easter egg of Omicron in there, but Omicron was associated with a virus and a quarantine in your book on the spaceship. So that was a pretty tight, you know, nexus between your book and the present.
Yeah, I had read a lot of, while I was working on the book, you know, to go back all the way to Constantinople, I knew that to show the impact of one person's actions to try to preserve something, I knew I wanted to show the butterfly effect of this girl in Constantinople who saves this old text, Anna. I knew I wanted to show it kind of ricochet all the way down into the present and into the future. I thought I could work on this tripartite structure, past, present, and future. And that way, hopefully, over time, I'm sure it risks confusing a reader in the first few hundred pages. But the idea is that the reader starts to feel how the small actions of one person can really ricochet down through time. And so I thought, I'm going to set this in other times when there are big technological upheavals in the world. And so I set it in the present, and in this time when I think climate chaos and artificial intelligence could intersect to create a really interesting and maybe frightening time for humans. So those are the kind of questions I'm struggling with. And I read a lot by this writer, David Quammen, who wrote a kind of famous book called Spillover long before the pandemic, just about the possibilities, especially about avian flu, but the possibilities of viruses spilling from animal populations into human populations as we infringe on more and more of their territory. And so, you know, he had a lot of predictions in that book coming true. And so, you know, he's like, we're going to have a lot of pandemics in the future. And I really felt like, okay, I'm going to have a pandemic affect these characters in the future.
Yeah.
And then we had one while I was finishing the book.
You're a prophet.
I guess, yeah, scary.
So you've got 5 characters in 3 different eras,
Yep.
all connected to this text that everyone that's gotten passed down, and all on their own journeys, their Odyssean journeys. The first is set in Constantinople, or the area in the 1450s, right before Constantinople falls. I remember you talking about this story years ago. You said, I'm going to do in my next book is going to be an ox herd, a herder, and in the 1450s, and I'm like, okay. But if
Sounds
anyone
amazing, Tony.
if anyone can pull it off, he can. And you did. This is the story of the past. And as we discussed before the show, I really fell into this story in particular, and I know I'm not alone, the relationship between Omer and his oxen, which sounds odd when you say it, but it is so poignant.
Yeah,
I mean,
it's this was the way we moved stuff around the world.
they
except for
were
boats.
beasts of burden, but they were also family for him.
Absolutely.
And it's so wrenching and poignant to read about that. So there's Anna and Omer in the past, and then we have a story that for Idahoans is even more interesting, I think, because it's set in what we know as soon as we read it is McCall, Idaho, in the present, and it's a story about Zeno, who is a drama teacher and was in the Korean War, and Seymour, who's a extremely challenged and angry young man, angry about development. I have to say, I winced several times, reading this story in particular about massive development, because we see it all around us in Idaho, and he's very, very upset by it. And it's not giving away anything in the story, because very early on, that he is about to commit an act
the first few pages.
of terrorism.
Yep.
And this too, sadly, in addition to the fact that we have a pandemic and you wrote about a virus,
I know.
this storyline sadly is reflected in the news several times since your book and recently. I know that part of your effort as a writer was to create empathy for Seymour, and I think you succeed in that. You learn his backstory, you learn why he is so angry and alone. There's a movement now when these things happen, when there's violence, to not say the name at all of the person, to not give them any credence. So at the same time that you were trying to create empathy for Seymour, did you worry about?
I'm worried about everything. I mean, of course I worry about every character and all kinds of stuff, but Seymour was extremely challenged. He's a very sensitive kid, but there's a lot of me in Seymour. The feeling that you get, every person watching this knows, like there's some special place in Idaho that you went 10 or 15 or 20 years ago, and now there's a house there or a road. And we don't have any more claim on those places than anybody else, but it's hard, it's challenging. I think Boise's now the fastest growing metro area in the United States. I think that's right. And there's this drawbridge mentality sometimes, like, okay, that's enough people, and that's not the way to think. And so, especially reading about climate, the way we just keep kind of pushing forward, there's every day, if you want, you can read something depressing about the way that humans are treating the natural world. And really one of the great projects of this novel was to try to get readers to feel that that this idea that there's a human world and a natural world and that we can live separately from it is false. Like there are an enormous wildernesses of microbes inside our guts that are all connected to the land around us. And the food that we rely on, the pandemic that we went through, everything is connected to how we're treating this shared planet that we share with lots and lots of other species. And Seymour is particularly acutely, overly sensitive to the damage that's being done to this little forest behind his house. He's a fatherless kid, got really attached to this owl, and something terrible happens. So I didn't worry too much about asking a reader to empathize with somebody who, on the surface, certainly in the first 20 to 50 pages, is going to feel like a villain, because I think that's what literature does. It asks us to complexify things. The only kind of books that I get bored reading are the ones that make the whole world too black and white.
Evil and good.
Exactly. Yeah. There's evil. Solzhenitsyn said, there's evil. There's a seed of evil carried in the heart of everybody. And I feel like hopefully you have to get to the end of the book. You feel this. There's not so much a redemption arc for Seymour, but hopefully that's complication where you get to see why he's made some of the decisions that he's made.
So the story in the past, the story in the present set in Idaho, and the story in the future that we've mentioned about the spaceship, those are all brought together, and they do, as I know, if you have patience, they do come together in the end. You really upped the ante with this one. I know you set challenges for yourself, but you went from 2 characters in All the Light to 5 here.
That's it,
and I know that
Marcia.
you had to map it out for your own self to be able to keep track of everything and to braid it all together and make sure that these stories were touching each other in some way.
Yeah.
So
All the Light, for folks who know, is kind of an A-B structure, like a ping pong match back and forth between Marie and Werner. And this is A, B, C, D, E. So there's a lot. It's 5 plates to keep spinning in a reader's mind. So I'm asking a lot more imaginative effort by a reader to keep all those plates spinning. And I just ask her to trust me, like I'm going to keep touching those plates every 2 or 3 pages. And hopefully there's this feeling when they're all spinning, like, okay, I understand where we are in each of the stories. And there's kind of a interest to see how they'll all resolve.
on the writing level, not the plot level or the research level, what were some of your challenges, or what was a challenge that you had? Because your prose really is so evocative.
Thanks. My goal is always to not sleepwalk through life. I feel like maybe it was stuff I was talking about with my grandma earlier, like this idea that we're gonna die has always been present. And I feel like, of course, there's going to be nights when you just want to turn on a football game and zone out and not pay attention. But most of my days, I want to be learning stuff while I can before I'm gone. If I'm so lucky, I'll get 80 years on this earth, and I want to learn as much as I can. And so when I'm building sentences, I try to skirt cliches because I feel like cliche is a way to kind of sleepwalk through a sentence. The first phrase, when you see the sun on a pond in the sawtooths, you think sun glints on the water. And sun and glints have been paired together so many times that they kind of lose their meaning. You know, you don't actually see what sun does when it reflects off water. So often the first phrase is the kind of rote combination, almost a stereotypical phrase that leaps into your mind. And I try to resist that and fight that. And so for me, paramount really all of my writing, I've tried to say, how can I combine words in a slightly unfamiliar way so that the reader will feel it and that I will feel this place a little bit more acutely. If you're setting something in 1450, it's like, how can you evoke this, you know, Anna is a seamstress or an embroideress who hates her job. And like, how can you evoke the real misery of this time before electric light, when these women are forced to just, you know, embroider these Christian figures onto these robes 6 days a week from dawn till dusk. You know, how can I evoke this? The flies looping over the benches. It's the silence. It's the footsteps of the head embroiderers walking behind them. And that just takes time. But I really like that. You know, that's a transportative thing. I get to kind of imagine myself. I'm like a professional imaginer. You know, I get to wake up and for 5 or 6 hours of my day, spend my time in some creation that I'm making with language.
And to see your wife and kids, Dad, come back from the 1450s.
Right. And then the whole house of cards falls in. You're like, oh, let's eat Fritos outside, you know? I just, you know, it's a great job. I'm so lucky. And I'm also I feel so fortunate that a reader's willing to pick up something I've written. That there's Virginia Woolf out there, or Edith Wharton or Melville, you know, it's like, well, why wouldn't you just go pick up Melville? So I feel like if I'm lucky enough to have somebody pick up something I've written, I don't want to lose them with carelessness. So sometimes it's also this insecurity of like, I promise I'm going to be really careful with these sentences, and I'm going to try to keep this narrative gripping enough that you'll keep turning pages. Because if I were you, I would just go read Edgar Allan Poe or somebody better.
With everything that's going on right now, Anthony, what gives you hope?
Yeah, well, let's be honest. Like, I oscillate between hope and fear all the time. Like, there's plenty of days you open the paper or you open the app on your phone with a paper on it, and you're like, oh boy. However, being a parent has been one of the most fundamentally changing things that has happened to me, transformative, because it removes you from the center of the narrative, right? So I feel like I draw hope from the kids, first of all, from human ingenuity. There's lots of examples of human ingenuity in the novel. Right now, I think one of the most hopeful things is, for a long time, people who were worried about climate change and the environment, the narrative was it's going to be really painful to wean ourselves off fossil fuels. It's really expensive to go to renewables. And that's changing so quickly that that narrative is already defunct. So I feel a lot of hope about that. I feel like, you know, Putin's invasion, for all the awful humanitarian disasters that it's causing, both micro and macro, it's really accelerating Europe's transition to renewables. So I feel some hope in that. I don't believe that we're going to be able to just invent ourselves out of all these crises, but I think the more storytelling we can do and the more we listen to young people, I'm just trying all the time to learn from young people and let the kids teach me now, I think then I start to feel hopeful sometimes.
As we wrap up, you know, I went back and looked at some of the interviews that we've done together over the years, which have always been a pleasure. And you mentioned a couple of story ideas. One which has become constants in The Girl in the Spaceship, but you also have been really interested in the Panama Canal and in the fur trade.
Oh, good
and
job,
might
Marcia.
we see anything like that in the future?
I both have big, complicated files on my computer about the Panama Canal. I feel like there is a really interesting story about manifest destiny, this idea that, like, we're just going to cut through a continent, and America's the nation to do that. And it's this enormous thing, but it's also a story of yellow fever, because, you know, it's this tiny, tiny, tiny creature, these insects, mosquitoes, that really derailed the French attempt to do it and almost derailed the attempt the Americans to do it. I haven't quite solved how to make that more than just a science narrative that I'm interested in. And there's a whole racist element to it too, which was, you know, often yellow fever was considered like a low disease, you know, that black people got. And so I'm worried somehow, I've got to figure out a way to tell that story still. It's a very interesting, truly American 20th century or beginning of the 20th century story. And fur, yeah, I mean, where we live, you know, this idea that the fashion for beaver hats, you know, not the beaver hats that we imagine, but fancy hats made from beaver fur, drove basically the extinction of the beaver. These enormous wetlands along the Snake were removed. And of course, all elsewhere, I'm way outside Idaho too. So someday I would love to tell a fur trade story. I have tons of notes.
And I cannot be the only one who wants to know if you're going to pen some short stories again.
Oh, thanks. Yeah. I'm always writing stories here and there. I have one going, and I have one in the O. Henry collection last year. Yeah, you know, your publisher wants novels because they reach more readers, but I love writing short stories. And also, I feel like you can take a few more risks in a story, because if the whole thing caves in, it's maybe only 2 or 3 months of your life, versus once you're about 5 years into your Panama Canal project, you gotta finish this thing.
And finally, Anthony, what has Idaho afforded you through all of this? Through the writing, through the accolades, through the press, through the...
I mean, everything. Idaho affords friendships, first of all, like real friendships, and so much access to places where my kids' phones don't work. You know, that's like one of the most important things in parenting. Is like, oh, guess what? Your phones aren't working. Now you guys have to talk to me. You know, Idaho is just a source of endless inspiration in terms of, you know, this morning before talking to you, I get to climb Proctor Mountain, and you just get to be out there, and you feel healthier and better and happier when you see the lupin blooming in the mountains. And also, you know, at a time when in 2015, when All the Light was really getting popular, it was really overwhelming for me. You know, I don't have like a staff or a team or anybody. It's just me. And, you know, we have people like driving to the house trying to get books signed, and lots and lots and lots of mail. And so the quiet and the kind of lack of competitive nature where friends just support each other, that's been just a real balm for me.
Well, I know that you've talked a lot about making sure that you have a legacy, and that we all have a legacy, frankly, you know, that we all think about the fact that life is short and what are we going to do while we're here and what are we going to leave behind? I have absolutely no doubt that what you will leave behind are some wonderful examples of the art of writing.
Thanks, Marcia.
So thank you very much for taking the time once again. I think you hold the record for the most amount of appearances on Dialogue, and I'm thankful for that. So congratulations for everything that's happened, and I look forward to the next oeuvre.
Oh, thanks, Marcia. Thanks for everything you do for culture and arts and history in our state.
Well, that was a lot of fun, and I hope you enjoyed it as well. You've been listening to Pulitzer Prize-winning Idaho author Anthony Doerr. Our conversation was taped at the 2022 Sun Valley Writers Conference. My thanks to the organizers of that capstone event for inviting us back for a 15th year, and to the Dialogue team members for all their work. If you'd like to watch this interview again, or any of the 70 conversations we've taped at the conference over the years, check out the Dialogue website. Just go to idahoptv.org and click on Dialogue. All the shows are also on Idaho Public Television's YouTube channel. And don't forget to like the Dialogue Facebook page. For Dialogue, I'm Marcia Franklin. Thanks for making us part of your day. And you're seeing streaming by all the people who help us make these, like Troy Shreve, who's directing this tonight and is behind the scenes and edited this program. So many people pitch in, and it's a great team that works on these, and we're thankful to them and the conference.
Well, of course, and include yourself there because you're the producer of this program. You kind of push that content forward, Marcia.
And Laura Moore Cunningham Foundation.
And great sponsors like Laura Moore Cunningham Foundation help us do this, but your calls of support tonight also help us.
Yes.
It's a lot of different sources to help Idaho Public Television produce and purchase these programs that you get to watch all year long. And so that's why we need to hear from you now, 1-800-980-4788 or idahoptv.org. Rented Lips.
We're hearing some bells. That means that some of the students from Boise State University's School of Public Service have received some calls during this interview. Thank you to them for being there, and thank you for calling in and showing your support for local programming like Dialogue. Jeff, I have some names to thank,
you know what,
too.
before you do the names, I also want to go out to talk to the student, or talk with about the students. This is a leadership community class. They live together for 2 semesters. All the time, and look at how they get along. I think that's just amazing. Of course, it's not first, you know, they're not through the first semester yet, so we'll see. Actually, I think it's wonderful that they live together, they learn together, and just like what you do with Idaho Public Television. You learn from Idaho Public Television as a community.
And I was talking earlier, you're going to meet Dean Andrew. I just know you as Andrew. Some of the issues and topics that Anthony Doerr discussed in my interview are very relevant to what these students are doing. So it's all related, and we and public television are a public service as well.
That's right.
And we cannot keep going without your support. It takes everyone. So thank you for calling in. And Diane Bilyeu called in.
Oh,
Thank you so much, Diane, for
Thank
calling in
you.
from Pocatello, Idaho. She says she loves public television and says it's one of the most important educational programs that Idaho has.
Former Friends of Idaho Public Television board member.
Yes, yes. And Heather Nygaard as well from Rexburg. Thanks so much, Heather.
Wonderful. And Catherine Linderman from Idaho Falls. Great to hear from around the state. And let's see here, Pamela Baumgart from Ketchum. Thank you so much, Pamela. And I have one more.
Okay.
Teresa Brown from Rigby.
All right, and Michael Horn from Eagle, Idaho. Jerry Hebel from Twin Falls, getting around the state. Michael Yakel from Donnelly, Idaho, seeing a lot of snow right now. Rolligay Milligan from Boise, and Robin Kimball from Nampa. Again, this is how widely we reach, and we really thank you for your phone calls. We do a lot more local programming than other stations do around the country, and that's because of your support. Timothy Hunt from Driggs, Idaho, called. Deneen Iliff, which is a nice, well-known name, from Twin Falls, Idaho. Linda Wintrode from Nampa, Idaho, and I think I'm back to Diane Bilyeu. So thank you very much for calling in. You can see all of our local programming on the screen here. It's a very unique. A lot of PBS stations don't have this amount of local programming. And I just want to mention, before we pass it over to our colleague Tina, that there are some really nice thank you gifts along with pledging your support for this interview with Tony Doerr. We have signed copies. He was gracious enough to sign some copies of All the Light We Cannot See, which is his Pulitzer Prize-winning book. What a great gift this would be for just $10 a month, or $120 a year. GEM stands for Give Every Month. And then Cloud Cuckoo Land as well, his most recent book, which was a finalist for the National Book Award. So these would make great gifts, and you're supporting public television at the same time. Plus, there's a couple other little goodies in the book as well, some artwork. So thank you again for watching Dialogue and Conversations from the Sun Valley Writers Conference, and for your support.
Thanks, Marcia. And now we're going to hand it over to Tina and Andy.
Thank you so much. You know, tonight is all about Idahoans, local solidarity. We're glad that we're part of Idaho Public Television, and we're very glad that you're a part of us as well. And we have some great shows coming up that are kind of reinforce that whole idea of Idahoans and solidarity. And I'm here with Andy Giacomazzi and his students from the Boise State School of Public Service. And Andy, tell us a little bit about, I mean, you're all about public service and solidarity in Idaho, and you know, your students, and tell us a little bit about what all of that means to you and all this being local.
Absolutely. Before I do that, though, I just want to say, give us a call right now, because this entire front row of wonderful students. We got Morgan over here, and Isaac, and Alex, and Izzy. They're waiting for phone calls at 800-980-4788, and we'll get you right back over here to talk to them. Idaho, I mean, it's one Idaho right now. We got some programming tonight that's going to kind of signify that as well.
I think it's going to all bring that around for us tonight. Yeah.
One of the things that we're doing tonight, just as a show of compassion and solidarity with our friends over at the University of Idaho. I know that our broadcast goes all over the state. I'm wearing a U of I pin today. Our students are wearing patches and buttons that really show our support for the University of Idaho Vandals. Some great people over there going through a really, really tough time. I know that the fraternities and sororities who have been affected by the deaths of Kaylee and Maddie and Xana and Ethan are really toughing it out. Their sisterhood and their brotherhood are really strong over there at Sigma Chi, at Pi Phi, and at Alpha Phis. And it's just a real tough time, and we just want to say, you know, once in a while we talk about the rivalries between, you know, universities in the state of Idaho and elsewhere, but there's no rivalry tonight. There's no rivalry. This is all about caring for students and caring for one another here in Idaho.
You know, well said, and that's, I think, what we hope we do as a public television station, Idaho Public Television, with our local programming. You know, there's a common thread with all Idahoans, and we hope tonight that through the programming that you're going to see, that you can see that. We're very proud of what we do. We're very grateful for how you help us, and we hope that we can kind of get a feeling of all that camaraderie tonight as the programming continues. So thank you so much for being here. We're going to talk to you more as we move on. Do you want to say some thank yous?
I would like to, just if we could, because you know, one of the things, if you call in, you're going to get a shout out from us here all night tonight. And I want to say, Tracy Castleman, thank you so much from Pocatello. She says, we're glad to be members, and we're glad to have you as members at Idaho Public Television. Michael Smith from Idaho Falls, thank you for a very generous donation. And Sonia Kennedy, thank you from Nampa, Idaho. We appreciate you. And then finally, David Buffington from Grandview, Idaho. Thank you for being with us tonight. Thank you.
Lovely to see that. Yeah. The show of everyone around the state. That's so appreciated. Thank you so much. I'm going to throw it quickly over to Jeff. He's going to introduce a little bit of the segment that's coming up next.
All right.
Thank you
and
so
I have
much.
to say, we had a comment on YouTube from someone who wanted to know if I were an Anthony Doerr character, what would I want to be? And I don't know. I can't. That's a hard one to answer because things happen to these characters. So,
you better
but I
pick the right
can
one.
say in the most recent book, oddly, I was really drawn to the character from 1450 in Oxford, which I teased Anthony about because I said I never thought that I would be drawn into that. But that just goes to show how good his writing is. So I know I didn't quite answer the question, but thanks for sending it in on YouTube. This was a YouTube watcher.
Yeah, we're streaming live on YouTube as well as broadcast. But what we need you to do now is call that number, 1-800-980-4788. Keep these students from Boise State University School for Public Service busy. Now, coming up next, Idaho Experience, Remembering the Sunshine Mine Disaster. This is a wonderful program. You'll see Bill and Aaron will be here, and Pat Metzler worked on it. Now, Marcia, you've worked on a couple of these programs in short order. These are really history of Idaho. This is what teaches us what has happened in the past.
This is our corollary to American Experience, Idaho Experience, and we really delve deeply, like no other media entity can, into these really important historical issues.
Yeah.
So I think I'm really looking forward to seeing this one as well.
Sometimes they're light, sometimes they're more heavy, like this Sunshine Mine coming up. But
Still
I got to tell you,
inspirational, though,
it is Bill said they are a great group of people up there that we're grateful that we were producing this program. The resilience shows. And we'd also like to thank City Peanut for giving us some sustenance tonight. Thank you, Dan and Sue. Call 1-800-980-4788 or go to idahoptv.org. Enjoy the show. We'll see you in a bit.
Idaho Experience is made possible with funding from the James and Barbara Semino Foundation, devoted to preserving the spirit of Idaho, from Ann Balikay and Louise Nelson, from Judy and Steve Meyer, with additional support from the J.A. and Catherine Albertson Family Foundation, the Friends of Idaho Public Television, the Idaho Public Television Endowment, and the Corporation for Public Broadcasting.
Ron Wilson, William Wilson, John Wolf.
91 names.
These were the 91 men.
91 miners killed. 91 grieving families. Every year on May 2nd, the Silver Valley remembers. People gather at the memorial along Interstate 90, just down the road from the Sunshine Mine, where smoke and gas from a fire burning in a mine tunnel 3,400 feet below ground turned deadly on May 2nd, 1972.
I don't remember my dad's voice. He tucked me into bed with my mom, he left, and I never saw him again.
In 2022, on the 50th anniversary of the fire, the service was bigger, with more decorations, more dignitaries,
Today it's all about remembrance.
and more
The
attendees.
lives lost and the families
But just
left
as in years
behind,
past,
and how Idaho-
the names were read, prayers were prayed,
John Peterson,
and one by one, headlamps went dark.
Francis Phillips, Irvin.
We have the 91 helmets up there and the lights are turned off every year. So people can get the perspective of how many lives were really lost that day.
My mom was pregnant with me, so I never got to meet my dad. This is the oldest.
It was tough. I was 8 years old, trying to survive without a dad.
When the crowds go home, the remembering goes on.
That Sunshine Mine Memorial, it's lit up at night. Every time you drive in the Silver Valley, you see that mining statue standing there and think about those people. There are very few folks who didn't have some relative or some relationship. And even if you didn't, if you're a miner or miner's family, it's a constant reminder of the dangers of underground work.
Peggy White lost her father, her uncle, and her brother-in-law in the fire. She's become one of the leaders in maintaining the memorial and the memories.
I do it for the families because there wasn't just one family. And that's what I always have to remember. It wasn't just my family. It was 91. And their hearts are just as broken as what mine was and my mom's. My nephew was a year old at the time. Didn't even get to know his dad. People need to know that they were men with lives. I don't want them just to be a name on the wall. I want them to know that they were men with wives and children. And that's the biggest thing to me.
Matt Beener lost his father in the fire, but he knows the suffering extended far beyond the families of the 91 miners.
The guys that lived through that fire, some of them I think were all right, but there was a bunch of them that it affected them the rest of their lives, which would have affected their families. It changed them. I feel bad for those guys. I mean, there's no memorial for them, but I know how bad it affected them. And I know other people know how bad it affected them too.
Don Caparelli traded shifts with another miner and wasn't in the mine that day of the fire. But he volunteered on the team that retrieved bodies. Today, he and others are working with schools to make sure that a new generation of Silver Valley residents knows that history.
This was during the fire.
You know, it's hard for young kids to understand. That loss in 1972 was so great to so many people. And that's what we're trying to make the kids understand as part of the history here. It's the loss that we're dealing with. It's that loss.
They call Idaho the gem state. There's a reason for that. It's because mining is so crucial, and especially the Silver Valley, where population came and was at the center of making Idaho eligible for statehood and bringing enough people in. That, coupled with Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints coming in the southern part of Idaho, gave sufficient population for territorial status and then state status.
Gold brought miners to Idaho in the 1860s. According to legend, Noah Kellogg was prospecting in 1885 when he found his lost donkey on what became the Bunker Hill Lode. When the first ski resort opened in 1967, the Jackass Ski Bowl honored Kellogg's fabled founding donkey.
The Silver Valley is one of the most important mining areas, not just because of the amount of production, but also the quality of the ore and how long it has existed as a mining region.
The Silver Belt tends to be more constrained to a region within the Silver Valley that historically has had higher silver production, as measured like ounces per ton. Bunker Hill is not part of the Silver Belt. Bunker Hill is principally a zinc mine with some lead and some silver. But the real major mines, the producers on the Silver Belt, were the Sunshine, the Galena, the Core. They're higher silver. Very unique to the district.
The Silver Valley was born donkey stubborn, and it's remained that way. Wary of outsiders, environmentalists, and regulators. Protective of the rough and tumble way of life. Folks talk fondly of the Silver Valley's reputation for working hard, playing hard, and until the 1980s, winking at the bordellos in Wallace.
A mining community is a tough community. They make a lot of money, they spend a lot of money, they don't like each other much, they fight with the loggers. It was a tough area, but it's a fair area. If you had an enemy, you had an enemy. If you had a friend, you had a friend.
Gold, silver, lead, and zinc built Idaho, and the Silver Valley, with its 100 mines, became one of the richest mining districts in the world.
They paid very well. After union activity, they provided excellent benefits in terms of health insurance. Silver Mountain was a company-owned ski resort built to attract managers to the Silver Valley. So it wasn't just the jobs themselves, it's the entire community. The Kellogg YMCA was built by the Bunker Hill Company as a way to encourage workers to have recreation. Lots of parks, especially ballparks, were built by mining companies, so they were central to everything.
The Sunshine mine claims date to the 1880s. By 1937, Sunshine was the nation's top producer of silver, yielding even more than Nevada's famous Comstock lode. Over its lifetime, more than 360 million ounces of silver came out of the Sunshine mine. Every ounce dug, blasted, or drilled by a miner.
It's something that you enjoy doing. It's good money, but it's really, really hard work. So working down there is an adventure for sure. Getting dirty and muddy and sweaty and grimy is a part of the job. Some areas, the deeper you go, the wetter it gets, the hotter it gets. It's a rough and tough job. It's not for everyone. You're going to work in a subterranean environment, the deepest of deepest.
I think most people don't realize how complex that underground world is and how far down they are and how you're going from one tunnel to the next. It's just like this kind of honeycomb of connected tunnels.
The Sunshine Mine is more than a mile deep, with dozens of working levels and miles of tunnels that radiate from central shafts. With rail cars, shops, and stations where employees wait, eat, and work, it was a small underground city. And with explosives, welding torches, and heavy electrical equipment, smoke from small fires was not uncommon.
They really didn't think that there was any chance of there being a bad fire in a hard rock mine. I mean, you think hard rock won't burn, but the fire was in an old worked out area of the mine where in the early years they used nothing but timber and never really thought about the timber burning. You just figured rock, what can burn, you know.
Fire. We don't know the cause of the fire or the exact location at this time. We don't know what might.
No one knows how the 1972 fire started. It burned into old timbers and into polyurethane insulation, sprayed on to keep a bulkhead airtight. Toxic gases spread through the mine's air shafts. Heavy smoke made it hard for miners to see, and invisible carbon monoxide made it deadly.
They found out later that the smoke had blown a bulkhead in the fresh air intake, so when they left the fans on, they were in reality pushing the smoke throughout the mine.
173 men went into the Sunshine Mine for the day shift on May 2nd, 1972. Why did fewer than half of them come out alive? The causes were numerous. All the bosses were out of town for a company meeting, so evacuation decisions got delayed. Communication inside the mine was spotty. The system for tracking miners inside was unreliable. When the operator of the 10-shaft hoist died, miners were denied a primary escape route. Miners didn't carry respirators, and many of the units that were in the mine were old or rusted. These self-rescuers became painfully hot when used correctly, but miners didn't know that because most weren't trained. These safety failings were not unique to Sunshine.
In 1972, there were no regulations for hard rock mines that required miners to either wear self-rescuers to protect themselves against carbon monoxide or be trained in how to use them. The Sunshine was one of the few mines in the area to even provide them, but they were stored at the shaft stations on different levels of the mine. They were kept in cabinets near the first aid stations, not with the miners themselves. As the men gathered at the stations, they were already having trouble breathing because of the smoke.
There was no panic. No, everybody was calm. That's half the reason I think half of them died. Nobody was worried. Everybody knew everything would be fine because the hard rock mine does not burn.
When rescuers did arrive later that day, they found men who had fallen where they stood, waiting for hoists that never came. In the hours after the fire, families began gathering at the mine. Scenes captured in iconic newspaper and TV images. But the true scale of what had happened wouldn't be known for days. Don Caparelli volunteered for the rescue crew, which became a grisly body recovery detail that lasted 11 days.
The hard part for me was when they found there was nobody alive no more. I would come up out of the mine, but then you had to walk out and to go up in the dry. The families were there. And it was like, I just put my head down because I just seen your dad or your husband. They're waiting there to see if they're alive.
And you knew?
Yeah, I knew. I put him in the bed, you know, I mean, he's gone. But I can't even face these people. Best thing for me to do is I just went around and I'd hurry and scurry up the stairs so I didn't have to talk to anybody. You know, if you knew their loved ones were gone. Yeah. You know, and all this has taken place. I gotta remember, I'm 23 years old. I'm not very old. You know, I'm still just a kid, you know. Yeah.
The death toll would have been worse had it not been for extraordinary heroism exhibited by many of the miners. starting with the shift bosses.
The shifters didn't leave at that time because they still had crews down there. They took responsibility for their own crews, and they wouldn't leave until their last man was out. So they remained, tried to help, tried to direct people, and they didn't make it. I believe there was a lot of heroes in that fire.
A guy by the name of Bob Scanlon, he lived up the road here. Bob was a relief hoistman at Tin Shaft. The hoistman had bad lungs, and he started getting affected by the CO. So Bob told him, he says, I can run it, just go ahead and leave and I'll run it. And Bob stayed on that hoist, and he was shaking. The CO was overtaking him. He had to have known he was going to die. But he died right there in the chair. He did not stop until he died. It's amazing, some of the stories. The heroism like Bob.
Greg Dione, a 23-year-old pipe fitter, was working that day. He was trained as a cager, and when the skip finally arrived, he was on it.
Greg came down, and the smoke was so thick you couldn't see it, and he had these self-rescuers. They looked like a tuna fish can that had a little knob in the center that you pushed it, and it broke the seal so you could breathe through it. Well, he handed them out to everybody and says, push that little knob and stick them on, and don't take them off. He says, they will get hot. So he stood by the shaft. He says, okay, the skip's here. And he started pushing guys out in the shaft. It was so smoky, I wasn't so sure the skip was there. I was glad when I stepped out that my feet hit something. But he packed us in there as tight as he could. There was no gates on it. This was the double drum skip. He said, you ready? And we said, yep. And we went up. He went to the 5,000 level, got a few people off the 5,000 level, sent them up. And Greg Dione did not make it out.
I didn't have a self-rescuer. They had some old ones in a locker. They were beating on with pipe wrenches, trying to get them to work. Don Beener, I give him credit for saving my life, had a self-rescuer with a mouthpiece on it. And he took it out of his mouth and put it in mine until I got to where I could breathe again.
Don Beener had already made it to safety when he volunteered to go back in with the first rescue crew. Each member carried his own oxygen supply. The breathing apparatus was heavy and cumbersome. Beener died when he took his mask off to share his oxygen with a struggling miner.
No, my dad, he didn't get out. My dad was still on the station, and he was trained in mine rescue, and he volunteered to go back. They got back there into the smoke, and the CO was deadly high, and ran into a guy that was coming out, and he had a lot of CO in him. And I'm sure my dad did too coming up. I think that's probably why he made the decisions he did. And my dad took his mask off, put it over the guy's face, told him to breathe it. The guy took a breath. My dad put it back on his face, took a breath, put it back on Schultz's face, and then he fell over. That was it. It is some comfort. I wish he would have did something different, but you can't change what happened.
Peggy White's dad, Gene Johnson, was a shaft foreman who could have walked to safety.
Her dad was out in fresh air. He wasn't out of the mine, but all you gotta do is walk out that door and down there and go out. Pretty simple. That's the opportunity Gene Johnson had. But he stayed there to make sure the other people went down the right hall. He gave his life to save all them people.
That's another comfort of mine, is God's in control. So the ones that lived, I'm glad they lived. And the ones that got a lot of the other guys out, bless all their hearts for doing it. That is something that you can hang on to. My mom never got over it. She died in the fire too. Part of her never got over it. They had a love between one another that a lot of people don't understand. She just really loved my dad, and he was good to her and the best. My dad's 6 foot, my mom was 5 foot. She's a little itty bitty thing. And she just loved him. I mean, they had their ups and downs as everyone, but she never did get over the loss.
There was more victims in '91 in that fire. Some of those guys carried it with them their whole lives, and to this day are still carrying it. I could only imagine the things that they've seen. You're 20, 30 years old, that would be terrible. I had one guy that came up to me one year, and he said, you know, I understand the deal about the memorial every year for the fire guys, but he says, what about us that lived through it?
There wasn't anybody that didn't know or related to somebody that happened to. So it touched everybody in the valley, that loss, you know. My neighbor, I hunted with him. We went, he perished in the fire. He lived right next door to me.
The fire burned for weeks. It took days for rescue crews to build walls to create safe air pockets from which they could search for miners and choke the fire. Even as the grim toll mounted, rescuers held out hope for survivors on the 4,800-foot level. There, a new shaft, the 4-foot-wide number 12 borehole, might be providing survivors fresh air. Thousands of feet below, partners Tom Wilkinson and Ron Flory were trying to stay alive.
Tom and I had went out to the main drift, was going to open an air door, see if that would take the smoke that way instead of back to where we was at. So we were trying to get it open. And Tom passed out. And I carried him back to the motor barn where the rest of the guys were, and we put him on top of the motor and took him back to where there was fresh air. We thought there was fresh air earlier, and there was still fresh air there. One guy took the motor out and tried to use the telephone. Apparently the rest of them got on the motor and tried to get back to where we was at. Didn't make it. They got within, probably 150 yards of where we was at. And all of them perished.
I was out cold. So I should have been actually the first one that died. It was smoky all the time, but we were surviving, so we just managed to stay there.
The two miners tapped a water line, scrounged some food from their colleagues' lunch buckets, and alternated between hope and despair.
We drank a lot of water. We always tried to keep water in us. It's pretty warm down. I'd say at least 100 degrees.
The U.S. Bureau of Mines borrowed a rescue capsule from the Atomic Energy Commission. The plan was to lower 2 rescuers in the capsule to look for survivors on the 4,800-foot level. Rescuers spent several days shoring up the number 12 borehole so they could safely send the rescue pod down. Below, Flory and Wilkinson had no idea what was happening.
We just basically sat there and talked and tried to figure out what they were doing to get us out. We knew they had to come down and get us sooner or later. We just didn't know if they'd get down in time to get us. At that time, we didn't know that they was working in the borehole or anything else.
We knew there was a fire. That's all we knew. We didn't know how bad it was or where it was. We didn't know anything. Not knowing it, I think that was the hardest thing. I think when I got down or something, Ron talked me up and vice versa. By yourself, you might have done some stupid things, because there was some stupid things suggested when Ron and I together, we talked each other out of them. And we had a light all the time. We had that motor in it, so we had a light. Our headlamps, they finally gave out, so we just had that battery. So we had a light all the time. We tried it with it off, but we kept it on.
On day 8, Tom Wilkinson thought his partner was dreaming, or maybe seeing things.
Ron looked up there and he said, well, there's a light. I thought, man, he's really lost it now, because we weren't expecting, if they did find us, coming in the way they did. So I looked and I said, my God, you're right. And he reached up with us and started beating on the pipe. And this, of course, the first thing we asked for was a cigarette. And there for a while, we swore we'd never smoke again after all that. And the first thing we asked for was a cigarette. And we asked them what was going on, what it was. And then they explained to us, how how bad it was. And we had to tell them, we didn't have the faintest idea. That's when it really hits you, I think, is what, we thought it was maybe just our level. We didn't know.
Rescuers pulled the men out. Ron went first, then waited for Tom, and they left the Sunshine together.
When we got to the main station there, they wanted to put us on a timber truck and push us out. Tom and I both told them, no, we walked in, we're gonna walk out. So the guy got on each side of us. They let us walk out.
I remember when we first got to the portal, and you opened the door, and the lights just hit us, and people just started clapping and hollering. I just couldn't imagine the amount of people who were out there cheering us on. It's hard to believe, especially after there probably a bunch of them up there that already knew that they lost somebody in their family.
When we come out of the portal and saw all the lights, and we just more or less put our heads down to shade our eyes. Both of us walked past our wives. We didn't see them. They reached out and grabbed us as we were walking by. We got a little flack on that.
I really wasn't expecting something like that, what a big deal, just the lights in, and then seeing all the people. On this side, there was my brothers, my dad, and them were all there. It was just a relief, I think. But I just didn't really realize how much of a heartache that was still there with the people up there.
At the hospital, the two survivors got to eat, and then got a special visit.
But the next day, Governor Andrus came up and seen us, Ron and I. I'll remember this. I got pictures. Governor Andrus bought us a 6-pack of beer. It had to be luck. I'm not really a religious person. There's no way to explain that. Just the right place, the right time. Like I said, I probably should have been the first one. And I was just lucky. Ron thought it'd be a good air, and we made it.
As luck, or fate, or coincidence would have it, the man now in charge of reopening the Sunshine Mine is Wilkinson's son-in-law.
I've just got amazing respect for that man, my father-in-law, Tom Wilkinson. He was one of the 2 miners that were trapped underground at the Sunshine for 8 days. It's odd that towards the end of my career now, this will be my last gig, is the mine where my father-in-law was trapped 50 years ago underground.
My uncle was here during the fire. He was part of opening up that borehole that got air down to the bottom. I try to absorb every bit of it I can. It's like being in a real-life history lesson. You always learn from the past. Tragic event, but you learned a lot from it, and you better hold on to it.
When the Sunshine Mine reopened after the 1972 fire, Tom Wilkinson went back to mining, and even visited the spot on the 4,800 level where he and Ron Flory had spent those frightening 8 days. Flory died in 2017.
I don't know if it's something I had to prove to myself, but I never thought of it that way. And I went back up 5,000, but I climbed up 4,800 and went back there where I'd spent a week. I think I just had to see it. And I stayed mining until they went on strike.
Wilkinson went on to work for the Forest Service, but always missed working underground.
Well, what they say, once a miner, you're always a miner.
Sunshine Mine reopened, but the heyday of mining was coming to an end. Strikes, bankruptcies, and tough metal markets all played a role, as did new environmental regulations, which remain contentious to this day. The Silver Valley cleanup has involved removing topsoil contaminated by pollution that came from smelter smokestacks.
Most of our cleanup is related to legacy contamination from mining and smelting that happened here. Mining began in the late 1880s. The Bunker Hill smelter operated from 1917 to 1983. So we have heavy metals contamination through the soil and throughout the floodplain and the communities that we've cleaned up. Since 1989, we've cleaned up over 7,000 properties. As the cleanups progressed, Initially, you had those 2,600 jobs that disappeared basically overnight. These communities became very depressed. For decades, we have led Idaho in poverty rate and unemployment rate. And this was a very pro-mining community. Back when Bunker Hill was running, it was the largest employer in the state of Idaho and had an annual payroll of $50 million. But it was your way of life, and it was your economy.
It's one of the most contentious Superfund sites in the country because there are huge numbers of people who object to the entire process and think it's not necessary. A lot of Silver Valley people think it's sort of outside folks coming in and telling them what to do.
The role of mining in this state has no doubt shifted a lot over the last 30 or 40 years. A lot of that has come about from absolutely appropriate changes in environmental standards. The Silver Valley boomed for 70, 80 years, principally because there was an unregulated industry. It wasn't until the enactment of the Clean Air and the Clean Water Acts of the 1960s and 70s that really changed how we treated the environment in the valley.
While there's disagreement over the cleanup, there's no disagreement about one thing. Mines are safer places to work today. Because of the Sunshine Mine fire, Congress mandated stringent new safety and training requirements in 1977.
Out of the Sunshine Fire, there's so much that's changed. I can't even begin to think how many lives probably have been saved as a result of the lessons learned from the Sunshine Fire. We don't look at safety as something that's a nuisance. It is part of our value system, and it's part of our culture. If anybody visits the Sunshine Mine or any other mines in the Silver Valley, they'll see dedicated refuge chambers that you can harbor in for weeks, if not months. We keep them stocked with water, they're air conditioned, they have food, communications, absorbents, sealing systems. So there's new safety standards for welding and fire suppression systems. All of our mobile equipment has fire suppression systems on them. We have gas detection, real-time monitoring of gases that are coming out of the mine.
This was a place of great change and tragedy, but out of the tragedy, the industry changed. I'm proud to be a part of that history, of that change. I wasn't here in '72, but to be working here and know the history is an honor. What came out of the event in the industry as far as mining safety? It's not just Sunshine, but it's all mines in America, all hard rock mining. Something good came out of something so tragic.
In many ways, the Sunshine Mine is a time capsule, preserved essentially as it was in 1972.
Working here, walking through the street or walking through quiet buildings, you get a sense of real living history. Like going through a ghost town in the Old West. A lot of generations lived in this area, working here.
The new ownership has kept up buildings and repaired machinery so they have access to the tunnels to map and explore, and get ready to mine silver again.
The whole mine was essentially turned off for a couple of years after Sunshine Mining called it quits. Subsequently, there's no maintenance, no care, no heat. Power was turned off. When we came here, it was, for all purposes, abandoned, and we had a lot of work in front of us. In 2003, I was offered a job here to reboot the mine, get it going, and do what I can do. The main goal was to get the hoist running, and so we did. And we got things like the boiler plant going, we got power back onto other places, and slowly woke up the queen of the Silver Valley. Since about 2012, it's been quiet, and we just keep it in good repair and keep the heat on and keep it clean.
We're going to take the time to maintain the mine, protecting the asset as it is. That is in advance of an exploration program, which will be to drill out 3,000 feet out into the walls of areas that are traditionally underexplored. The mine has 36 named veins. A lot of it is just sitting there, ready to go. We're going to need to find a little bit more so that we can kind of refurbish what we have here, put in new, more modernized plants and safety systems and hoists, accesses, so that we can take advantage of that, not for just a short haul, but looking at Sunshine as most likely being able to produce the same 380 million ounces of silver it's produced over its last 100 years. That time frame, probably 5 years. You'd be looking at around 300, 350 miners that would be full-time employed. And I suspect that the secondary benefits of that will be another 2 people employed for every person employed at the mine supporting the industry. It has a big ripple effect. I keep saying the Sunshine Mine's got another day of sunshine ahead of her, and I think it's going to be just as good as the last one.
When the mining economy in the Silver Valley collapsed, it hit towns like Kellogg hard.
1981, when Bunker Hill shut down the mine, the smelter, and the zinc plant, that killed 2,500 jobs, good-paying jobs, and put 2,500 people out of work. Kellogg's population was around 6,000. 2 years later, it was under 3. Those people had to leave our community, go someplace else. We had no money. People were leaving. So we were at the crossroads. We had to do something. And we said, now we've got one thing to offer at this time, that's recreation. So we've got to keep that thing going until we figure out what we're going to do. So we did, and it wasn't easy.
The city took over and expanded the ski resort, and even passed a bond to build the gondola that remains the centerpiece of the Silver Mountain Resort, which is in private ownership today.
This was the only place in the United States you could drive off the freeway. 5 minutes later, you'd be sitting on a gondola. 10 minutes later, you're skiing on a mountain. In a lot of years, you could ski in the morning, go play golf in the afternoon. The Rails to Trails started through with the cleanup from the Bunker Hill Railroad grade. That started bringing people in. We got in step with the EPA and started working together with them as well as the state.
As the Silver Valley hopes for future prosperity from future mining, the community draws visitors to its bike trails, water park, golf course, and ski lifts. A cleaner Silver Valley is enticing new residents with its natural beauty and recreation.
A lot of people from elsewhere have found retirement there, and tourism has helped the Silver Valley kind of revive. And it's such a beautiful area.
Go for it. Get it. Get it, Tristan.
The latest economic engine arrived on 2 wheels.
This is a premier race. You get pros from all across the country. The trails here are way different than we have in Missoula. A lot rooty, rocky, technical. You gain a lot of elevation, lose a lot of elevation with the gondola here, so it's pretty unique. There's no other resort that I've been to in the U.S. anything like this.
We love the trails. They're gnarly, but there's some fun flow trails. You can really get any kind of trail you want, steep and techy or flowy and fast. And you can just shred from top to bottom. The mountain bike trails are amazing. It's about an hour drive from Spokane. It's an easy drive, just a quick pop over on the freeway. I love coming to Kellogg because the community is awesome. It's so fun. You just hang out with your friends. You can stop by the Bean down in Kellogg and grab a bagel or a drink afterwards. It's the best.
The locals here are super welcoming. I think mountain biking's done a lot for this community, and I think Kellogg's done a lot for mountain biking. It's a great place. It's got that mom and pop feel that we've lost in a lot of other places in the country these days.
We could have locked this place up and turned the lights off and moved. But being stubborn, I guess, is helpful.
Idaho Experience is made possible with funding from the James and Barbara Semino Foundation, devoted to preserving the spirit of Idaho, from Ann Balikay and Louise Nelson, from Judy and Steve Meyer, with additional support from the J.A. and Catherine Albertson Family Foundation, the Friends of Idaho Public Television, the Idaho Public Television Endowment, and the Corporation for Public Broadcasting.
Well, thank you so much for watching that Idaho Experience, a very, very serious Idaho Experience, but I think it really represents what Idaho Public Television can do best, tell those stories, and the stories of the Silver Valley and how that group of people are so resilient, and they are a part of Idaho just like we are, and where, you know, there were so many people there for them at that time, and I think that's just what we can do here at Idaho Public Television.
Right, and I think what makes Idaho Experience unique as well is that it's not just looking at the history, but it's bringing it forward, right? So you see how that tragedy now has led to safety considerations, and how the community now commemorates it, and how people even are mountain biking there. So we pull it forward as well, and I know we've tried to do that with other Idaho Experience programs that I've worked on, as well as other producers here.
Exactly.
So that makes it distinctive, I think.
Yeah, now we have this show tonight. It was a very serious, somber show, but it did, like Marcia said, what has happened in the past teaches us what to do in the future. And we do have the producer of the show, Bill Manny, on Zoom with us tonight from a distant location. Pat Metzler also worked on this program. What a wonderful director Pat Metzler is. He put it together. And of course, Aaron Coons did much of the shooting for this. You saw a lot of old footage that the crew had gathered over time, and that takes a lot of work by the crew. So if we can introduce Bill here, that would be great. Bill, how are you tonight?
I'm well, thank you. How are you guys doing?
Wonderful in the studio, and we will get back to the studio in a minute, but we really want to talk to you about the seriousness and how you felt this was so important to tell this story.
Well, you know, 91 miners died, and it was a tragedy, unfathomable tragedy for that community. But what I came away with this is a story about heroism and rescuers and courage and survivors and resilience, and so much is happening besides just what happened in 1972.
And I also want to know what it was like to go down in the mine, Bill.
We got to go down the mine twice, actually. The Sunshine Mine, the new owners are exploring and mapping and keeping that mine, as we showed during the show, you know, ready for future mining. And we got to go down twice to film both what it's like to be in the mine and also to see some of the changes that have happened since 1972, including, if you'll remember, seeing those new refuge chambers where miners can go hunker down if there's an emergency. It was a fascinating experience.
Now, Bill, it wasn't just you and the crew, the local production crew here, that thought this was a good story. This was the 50th year after the disaster, but you got a lot of input from the Kellogg and the Silver Valley area residents too, right?
You know, we had people contacting us early this year suggesting this would be, you know, a great time for this show. And so we met with folks up in Kellogg and Wallace, got to know them actually before the May 2nd memorial, and then we attended the May 2nd memorial. It was an incredibly moving experience, humbling, emotional, really, but inspiring, right? That 50 years later, people are taking the time and the trouble to remember not just what happened in 1972, but everything that's happened since. And I think the biggest takeaway is just how much safer mines have become as a result of what happened in 1972. You know, so you have mining safety changes, you've had environmental changes, you've had economic changes. The Silver Valley has gone through so much, and it's so impressive the way that resilience has exhibited itself.
Yeah, and from I know over the years that I've been here at Idaho Public Television, there have been a lot of interviews and documentaries over time.
Yes, it was great for me to watch because I did a dialogue interview. Bill? I think you looked at it, maybe it was
2007.
Yeah, a long time ago. And so it was really interesting to see what's been done since then, and that some of the people that I interviewed are still alive, which is great.
Yeah, and I know, as most of you know, and in the studio anyway, my wife is from the Silver Valley, and a lot of family members are still there, and they knew this firsthand. They saw, they lived through it. But they're a resilient bunch. They're a connected bunch up there in the Silver Valley, and so we want to hear from you tonight. Back to the studio here a little bit for what we're doing. This is Decemberfest. This is the last night of our 3-night spree of asking you for your support, so we can continue.
And we're featuring local programs.
Local programs tonight.
We had Dialogue, now Idaho Experience, Outdoor Idaho is coming up.
Yep.
And that really does make Idaho Public Television unique.
And we're also here with the Boise State University School of Public Service students who are not doing their homework, but they will answer your calls.
This is their homework. They're getting extra credit.
Oh, are they getting extra credit?
No, I'm making that up. They should get extra credit. The dean is like, no, don't say that.
I'm over there if I get extra credit. But if you call in tonight, you will help us throughout the year build these programs that take a lot of time and energy. This was not just 3 people working on a show for a small amount of time. This was a lot of research that went into it. Bill Manny spent many of his waking hours working on this, but we need to hear from you, 1-800-980-4788, or go to idahoptv.org. You can also text the word GIVE. I have to be careful with that. Text the word GIVE to that number, and we will send you back a link.
And having you call out the students, mention them, reminds me that we do, all these programs are also on our website and on YouTube, and they have educational curriculum that's designed with them as well, which is really neat.
Yeah, on PBS Learning Media, you can go to our website and find PBS Learning Media. It's a portal, a free portal for children, students, and families who want to go look at educational content through K through 12. If you want to learn more, and we put all of Idaho Experience programs on there, and the curriculum is built by 4th grade Idaho teachers who are teaching the Idaho history curriculum. And that will appear there in the next few months, actually throughout the summer.
We've got some interesting IDEXs coming up too.
We do. So with that, we're going to hand it over to Tina and the guys in the studio.
Thank you so much, Jeff. This really hits home for me because I'm a native Idahoan. You're a native Idahoan. I'm here. And are you a native too, Andy?
I feel like it. I've been here 23 years. I think I qualify now. Yeah.
Hi, I'm Tina Wright, and I'm here with Caden Stone. He is a student at Boise State in the School of Public Service and one of Andy's cohorts. And Andy Giacomazzi is the Associate Dean at the School of Public Service. And we were just talking a little bit about how this program really shows the resilience of Idahoans in the state and, who we are as humans but Idahoans. And that's kind of what we're all about here at Idaho Public Television. We hope that we can convey that kind of solidarity and connectedness throughout the state with our reaching nearly all of Idaho with our signals and with your help producing these types of programs that can show the history of Idaho just a little bit. And Caden, you're from North Idaho, right?
Correct, yes.
And where are you from?
I am from Coeur d'Alene, Idaho.
So you weren't born yet when the disaster happened.
Correct.
But you are familiar with the Silver Valley. You know people.
Yes.
And we're talking about resilience a little bit, and we've talked a little earlier about you guys, and you're wearing your patches with your University of Idaho Vandals and the support with the tragedies that are happening now. And I want you to talk just a little, if you would. These things happen, these tragedies happen. We try to put these stories together so that you can learn the history and that you're not alone and that you know that these things happen and that we all come out of them better and stronger with our support of each other in Idaho. So tell us a little bit about what you guys are going through with the Vandal issue and all of that.
Yeah, it's been, I'm personally from Coeur d'Alene. I went to Lake City High School. I graduated from Lake City High School. I had the honor of serving as the 28th student body president at Lake City High School. And I actually went to school with, for 1 year, Kaylee and Maddie, who were tragically victims of what happened at U of I. And they showed what was best in Idaho, I believe. They showed that just being involved, being kind, and being good neighbors. What we've seen in losing such great people like them is that Idaho has really come together, and that's who we are. We're a smaller state, but that just means we're that much more interconnected, intertwined, tight-knit, and it's been very good to see. You know, I'm wearing Boise State blue, and I have an Idaho Vandals patch on, and even though we're supposed to be sworn rivals, you know, we've come together. You know, it just shows that even through the toughest of times, we can come together, even through the bitterest of rivalries. You know, we're all one Idaho, and I just think that's really important, especially in tough times like this.
I agree. I don't think I could have said it better.
Wow. Yeah.
Right?
Caden's part of the leadership community, by the way, living learning community over at Boise State, and you can certainly tell that and appreciate everything that Caden has been saying. And you and I were watching this program on the Sunshine Mind together outside the studio, and the stuff that came to mind for me, I just jotted down: tragedy, but also family and community and heroism and caring and coming together and resilience, and all the themes that came out of Caden's mouth just a minute ago ring true back then in 1972 and certainly today here in Idaho as we continue to grapple with the realities of what goes on around us these days. And sometimes it's a real hard thing.
It is, and that is why we're here, because of your support, producing these local programs that mean so much to Idahoans, and hoping that we can share these stories for generations to come and use them as learning opportunities for the young children to realize that we are important to each other. We're all one community. We can survive, we can grow, we can flourish. And because of you and your support tonight, please give us a call, and so we can continue to make these types of programs and these learning opportunities for generations to come, for Caden and his kids and and everyone else. So we encourage you to call in if you can. Do you want to read the number on the screen?
Yes, that number is 1-800-980-4788. Just call in and keep all my friends and I busy. We're here all night, so we hope you'll call tonight and give a generous donation.
Awesome.
Yes, thanks. And we have some thank you gifts if you'd like to choose one. You don't have to, but we have an Idaho ornament that is made from Idaho pine and actually from an Idaho artist. So it's something that sort of means a lot to us here at the station, and we'd like to share that with you. If you'd like to have an Idaho ornament, it's in a really nice gift box, so it would be a great gift for Christmas. And then we also have our Idaho Experience Journal. If you'd like to start your own history and jotting down some of the things that mean something to you, and you can start, maybe use that journal. So give us a call. Again, the students here are waiting for your calls. They want to be kept busy. There they are again.
It's looking like they're busy.
I
This is
know.
great. Let's
I was
keep
just
going.
glancing over going,
Yeah.
oh my gosh, there's lots of people there. So we appreciate that so much.
Oh.
I'm going to throw it back over to Jeff again. And he's going to talk a little bit about some more of the local programming with some more guests in the studio.
All
And
right.
thank you so much, both of you.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Anytime.
Thanks, Tina. So I'm here with the effervescent Lauren Malink, lead producer on Outdoor Idaho, and the retiring. And I don't mean retiring as in retiring. You're really retiring.
As of
Jay.
today.
Jay Krajek, this is his last day here on Outdoor Idaho, and hopefully Bill Manny is still in the Ethernet somewhere that he can kind of pitch in. Oh, good, Bill. We're glad to see you're still there.
Bill's head. Hi,
So
Bill's head.
coming up next is going to be an Outdoor Idaho. It's Outdoor Idaho in the shadow of the Bitterroots.
Yes.
It's a place that we haven't focused on a lot.
Yeah. It's a tough place to get to, too.
Slightly. Now, before we get to that, though, I want to say a few things. It is so easy to give. That's why we're here tonight, to ask for your support so we can continue bringing you these shows. We can continue keeping our crew in the field busy, because they love what they do. They do this for you. So you can do an annual gift every month if you want to become a gem, that whole list of things, and down into the areas where if you want to leave a legacy, you can give our philanthropic folks a call. They will help you set something like that up. At 1-800-980-4788. Our funding sources are very important. The state helps us so much get that infrastructure built to get that signal out to you, but 71% is you, the public, that help us produce these programs. So we need to hear from you tonight. So back to you, producers, and Bill Manny out there in the ether, executive producer of the Idaho Public Television Production Gang. Tell us a little bit about this show.
Yeah, we spent almost 2 years, really, about a little over a year and a half.
Now wait, every single day on this show?
It was rough. Yeah.
Now this is inefficiency.
It did
at
nothing
its
else.
best.
Yeah. Now we wanted to capture the winter, spring, summer. They're at different seasons, showcase different parts of the Bitterroots, and so
We started 2021. In early summer 2021 we started, and then it got smoky. Kind of stopped everything just because you wouldn't be able to see anything. So
this is true.
We picked up again
So you pick up a shoot here, a shoot there. You've learned things from other people that you've interviewed, other stories to capture.
Yes. One thing leads to another. Suddenly we have to climb the tallest mountain in the Bitterroots, which is Trapper Peak.
Had to climb the tallest mountain.
We had to. Jay was so happy about it. It was a lot.
I feel so sorry for you.
Yeah, rough job.
I don't get to go out and do that anymore, so I just have to live vicariously through you guys.
We'll let you know.
Okay.
Yeah.
Bill?
You know, Jeff, one thing we're not going to miss after Jay retires is all his complaining about climbing mountains. We won't miss that.
Be a welcome
change. I was just going to...
Just let me know when you're going to do the next one, Bill.
I don't think it's complaining for real.
Now you can go without a camera in hand.
Yeah, I can actually beat Bill the last time we climbed one.
Well, and we have the goat Terry out here in the audience.
Yes.
This is really what does. This guy really is what.
Couldn't do anything without Terry.
Terry carries
Terry.
all of your gear, so I don't feel so sorry for you. But you know, it sounds like it's a lot of fun here. It is actually very gratifying work. I know it from experience, and I know what these guys are going through, and I know they love it.
Yeah, it's pretty special. And there's some really fantastic stories and people that are in the Bitterroots and in Idaho. And so it's pretty amazing that this range connects areas from Wallace down to Salmon, really.
Yeah.
So it's a really large chunk of Idaho.
Huge area.
And that we were able to showcase.
Yeah.
Well, and that's a great thing that we can do here at Idaho Public Television that few other media aid organizations can do. We cover the entire state. That's our mission, to cover the state. And really, it's such a diverse state. Even in the Bitterroots, you know, trying to get to it as you did, you see a lot of different regions, people, thoughts, feelings for what our state is. But what it comes down to, everybody loves this state that's in it. They love to be out in it, and I think that's what Outdoor Idaho really does for the viewership. It brings you, it helps you explore the state through the TV.
And that's what's special about the show is we've got bike riders, and then we've got motorcyclists, and we've got coastal flora, and then we've got alpine, you know, dry environment. So it's really got something for everyone.
Oh, I don't think there's nothing dry up there.
Trapper Peak is pretty dry.
Humidity. It was humid and buggy.
More complaints.
It was humid and buggy, but very beautiful.
Bill, do you want to have the last word here before we go back to Tina?
Those guys, there's made 8 or 9 or 10 reporting trips up to North Idaho to do this show, and we made 4 reporting trips to do our show about the Silver Valley. And Pat Metzler, who's worked here for almost as long as Jay, has done numerous trips up to the Silver Valley.
Longer than me.
And the fact that we have a staff that is that experienced and that veteran is just a testament to what we can do with the support that we get from our viewers and from our, from our supporters. And if we want to keep making shows like these, we really need that support.
Well said, Bill, and thank you so much for the Sunshine Mine documentary. That was well done, along with Pat Metzler and Aaron Coons, who's not here tonight. But you guys will be here in the next couple of breaks, so you'll see more of Jay and his antics.
Get tired of us.
But 1-800-980-4788, or I'll go to idahoptv.org. Now I'm going to pass it over to Tina and the gang.
Thank you very much. And speaking of thank you for your support, the support of the community. Andy and Caden, your group here from the Boise State School of Public Service, if we didn't have you guys, we couldn't answer all these phones. We couldn't have any more people to talk to. We'd be talking to ourselves, and it gets really, really boring. So it's so nice to have the support of the community. And we're just going to say a quick thank you. We have 3 of them that we'd like to read for those of you that have called in.
Of course. So we have Mike and Jean Correa from New Meadows, Idaho.
Thank you.
And Bonnie Stitzel from Boise, Idaho. Thank you so much. She enjoys watching as time goes by.
Nice. And Bay Emelson from Boise. Thank you so much for calling in. We sure appreciate your support. You can see some thank you gifts up there if you'd like to choose one of those. Please give us a call. Boise State students are here. They're ready to talk to you.
Yeah.
And we would like to thank Edwards for the wonderful decor that we have this evening that you're seeing on the screen. So we're going to throw it back to the show now and enjoy Outdoor Idaho, Shadow of the Bitterroots.
Granitic and glaciated, the Bitterroot Mountains form the rugged and remote border between Idaho and Montana. The range and its surroundings include 1.3 million acres of designated wilderness, 5 national forests, and countless rivers and streams.
It doesn't feel like it's a landscape that's made for us. It feels like it's a landscape that nature created. Being out here, you feel like you're exploring true wilderness. And I can't say that anywhere else I've been has really felt quite as wild as here.
With elevations as low as 1,300 feet, the mountain range boasts coastal flora and soaring cedar trees. Then climbs above 10,000 feet to showcase sharp ridges and alpine lakes. In the summer, the landscape feels alive. Birds chirp and mosquitoes buzz. Wildlife roams. Haze drifts between peaks, and berry picking is abundant. And in the winter, snow-covered rocks sit stoic in the middle of icy rivers. Frozen drifts, snow falling to make the sky match the hills.
It makes me feel really lucky and blessed that here I am getting to work in a place like this that required all of these processes going back millions or billions of years to make this beautiful landscape.
In the shadow of the Bitterroots, there's a reverence for the unpolished and inhospitable terrain, a respect for the challenge the mountains offer up to anyone who dares enter their kingdom. And there's a tenderness for misty mornings and for sunsets, for bushwhacking and for burnt trees, for a sense of quiet and of history and of knowing that this, all of this, matters more than we can ever know.
Funding for Outdoor Idaho is made possible by the Laura Moore Cunningham Foundation, committed to fulfilling the Moore and Bettis family legacy of building the great state of Idaho, by the Friends of Idaho Public Television, by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, and by the Idaho Public Television Endowment.
Inwanakasa Tiskat Elpelt Titoka Timki Ka Soyapo Timki Harry Slickpoo Jr. Inwas Nimi Puhama Ka Iniminaknik Tiwas Lumptama. The Nez Perce people called the Bitterroot Range the Islamisnima. Islamisnima in the Nez Perce language translates to the place with brook trout. So all along the Bitterroot Valley, the Bitterroot Mountains, and even into Missoula, it was called Islamisnima, the Bitterroots.
11,000 years ago, before fur trappers and Lewis and Clark, before the gold rush, before ski resorts and bike paths, raft trips and motorcycles, the Nez Perce or Nimipu lived off the land upon and around the Bitterroot Mountains.
There's still very sacred places out here, whether it's the smoking place or Indian Post Office, or down here in the South Fork we have Pilot Knob. In my language is Tumployitsmux. Those holy mountains and those sacred places are very important to our people today for a number of reasons, including our resources, our medicines, things that people need every day for our survival. There's actually place names in Nez Perce all the way back here into Nez Perce country, even in the Bitterroot Mountains, the Trapper Peak. Saksachnim Init means osprey's nest, and El Capitan Hinmatum Init, the thunder's nest. Even throughout the Selway Craigs, where the Nez Perce people have these names, it's not just a empty and void place or like a national forest. You actually had to get your feet out on the ground to these places and learn about them. Being so far out in what we call wilderness today, a long time ago it wasn't wilderness to us, it was just the land. But being here in holy places or sacred places like this really makes you reach back through thousands of years and know that your ancestors are walking with you.
Over time, the Nimiipuu learned to navigate the Bitterroot Mountains with efficiency, taking 1 or 2 routes across the range to hunt buffalo.
The reason why we call this specific trail Wisa'iskit is because one day's travel on foot and you'll come to another good level ground for camping. So it was called the camping trail. And it would usually take a few weeks, a week or more to get over to Montana, over the Bitterroots, and they'd come out near today's Darby, Montana. Wakipa ki iskit wanakin Wisa'iskit anokon matatokan kusay nayak tich kusana ka ibskalich ni tatu kinawatas pa ka tukalich kokalch ka kusana mam nukt ka laam himyuma kalautiwama akaantich kiwatas. I would just like to say that these trail systems are very important and that our people use them for thousands of years, and just to have a respect for the land.
It's 10 to 11,000 years old, one of the oldest surviving trails on the planet. And I think it's probably the oldest surviving trail in North America. Nothing comes close to it in terms of age. And the amazing thing about its being findable is that it's a single route. It's not multiple routes. There's not braided trails and whole hillsides full of trails. There's a trail. They use fire as a management tool. That's how they kept the trail open.
As years passed, the forest did what forests do best and grew over top the trail. That is, until retired historian and conservationist Dennis Baird got involved.
We decided to find the trail, not roughly where it was, but really where it was, because we knew it was very old. And the other was to reopen it, but not to build a new trail, just to reopen the trail on its existing route. And there had been an effort by Boy Scouts and others 40 or 50 years ago to sign the trail with little wooden signs, and they did a very good job, so their effort was very helpful to us.
Clearing trees outside the wilderness boundary means chainsaws are allowed. So in the summer of 2022, Baird, along with friend and cohort Ivor Nelson, gathered together a group of volunteers who wield chainsaws with absolute finesse.
And the great thing about these guys, what I want to call the stormtroopers, the smoke jumpers, is they are heavy equipment people, and they just go after those big trees. And you're tripping through forest, and this is an old forest, so it's not pristine grass and you're just walking across that with a few trees. It's matchsticks everywhere. And so you're stepping over, you got to really watch how you step, and it's wet right now too. But these guys were great, so we got a lot done.
Over the past 10 years, these volunteers have opened 30 to 40 miles of the Southern Nez Perce Trail. An impressive feat physically and an emotional experience mentally.
It's the real thing. It's not roughly where it is, it's actually where it is and where it always has been for 11,000 years. It's a powerful experience to simply stop on a quiet day in the woods, standing where you know people have been standing and walking for 11,000 years, and wonder, what were they doing? Where were they going? What were they thinking when they were, who was it? Were they here with their family? It's a wonderful experience to stand there and think that. That's one of the charms of the opened trail.
It's an ancient way of people moving around the United States. There are markers To tell you where the trail was, the basic one, the very, very basic one, is the tread itself. And it is amazing. It can be a foot deep, it can be nothing.
People lived along the trail, they hunted along the trail. There were village sites out here in this country. And so I would encourage people to visit the trail, but just to remember whose trail it is.
Crossing the Bitterroot Mountain Range in pre-modern times was no easy task. Explorers Meriwether Lewis and William Clark learned that the hard way.
That route was by far the most difficult part of their journey, their route through the Bitterroots. It was the bane of their existence, both going west and east. That was kind of the thought, probably the most disappointing view in American exploration history was when Meriwether Lewis went to Lemhi Pass that day in 1805 and realized that it's a long ways to the Pacific. Every story you read about crossing those Bitterroots, including the people building the Lewis and Clark Highway, it's all a story of difficult go. I mean, that transportation, that Lewis and Clark Highway connecting basically Missoula with Lewiston didn't happen until the 1960s.
One has to wonder, if the Bitterroot landscape is so rugged and unforgiving, why was the Idaho-Montana border drawn in the way that it was? Hundreds of miles of squiggly borderline over peaks, across ridgelines, and into drainages.
But if you look at a map of the West, you look at Wyoming and Colorado and almost, Utah nearly, they're all rectangles and straight lines. And you look at Idaho and something weird happened here. The myth of the Bitterroots and how that border came to be. The most popular is that the surveyors got drunk and lost their way, and hence we have Lost Trail Pass. The problem with that story is that Lost Trail Pass was named long before the survey parties even went out.
The true story is a lot more complicated than that. In 1863, Abraham Lincoln signed the act that created the Idaho Territory, a massive piece of land.
It was all of Idaho, all of Montana, and virtually all of Wyoming. Unmanageable. The very first thing they did, the very first act of that first territorial legislature was to pass a memorial to Congress to shrink the territory. And they had an idea about how it should be shrunk. By this time, people were already calling whatever the new territory is going to be Montana. So the dividing line between Idaho and Montana should be the Continental Divide, the Rocky Mountains. So they sent that into Congress.
But then things get a little messy. Abe Lincoln appoints Sidney Edgerton to be on the Territorial Supreme Court. He makes his way to western Montana and decides the mining boom might hold opportunities for him. Miners give him $2,500 to lobby for a new border along the Bitterroots, not the Divide, which would ensure western Montana mining towns stay in Montana. And by the next year, Montana has withdrawn from the Idaho Territory, establishing the Bitterroot Mountains as the state's boundary, all before Idaho could even object.
And it won the day because the Idaho legislature fell asleep at the switch. It's real important to understand that Congress specifically spelled out, according to what Sidney Edgerton asked them to do, that the border will run along the crest of the Rocky Mountains, northward to its intersection with the Bitterroot Mountains, to the 39th parallel of longitude, and then basically in a straight line to Canada.
And according to Keith Peterson, that decision changed Idaho's trajectory.
What it did was it took what had always been an east-west orientation. It created this isolated panhandle, and you can't understand Idaho history without understanding now 160 years of trying to connect North and South Idaho, culturally, transportationally, whatever. It's all about, so much of Idaho history at least is about trying to connect North and South because trade don't flow north and south in Idaho.
Although lawmakers were able to determine the Bitterroots as the border between Idaho and Montana, for some, the actual border of the Bitterroot mountain range is still up for debate.
I think of the Bitterroots as the range that runs from essentially the Lolo Hot Springs area down to the break into the Big Hole Valley. That would be, as a geologist, we would think of that as the actual metamorphic core of this complex. Oh, there it goes. It's all gonna go.
But that's not the question geologist Elizabeth Castle and PhD student Haley Thorson are here to answer. At least not today.
By looking at these volcanics, we can do a multitude of things, one of which is to date when those volcanics formed, because knowing when those volcanics formed and when they were deposited tells a story of not only how they got there, but knowing kind of how they got there can let us know about the topography of the surrounding region.
Yeah, there we go. We take a bunch of different kinds of samples because we're trying to understand this entire Earth process. What is special about the Bitterroots is they are the result of stretching or extending of the crust on one major fault. And that fault goes all the way into the middle or lower crust. And so you're bringing rocks up from very deep, 20, 30 kilometers depth, up to the surface, basically in this sort of motion. And so this is the Bitterroots here that we see today. They're not very old. That would have occurred 50 to 40 million years ago. So not very old on geologic time. We end up looking for locations in which we would find certain types of volcanic rocks. We want them to be the right age range, that they're going to actually tell us something about, say, the topography at some time in the past. We went to the road cut first because someone went in there in the past 100 years and cut that. So it gotten into a surface that hasn't been exposed to water and air for a long time, because water and air basically are going to start to alter the minerals in the rock.
We usually take like a gallon-sized sample of rock, and then that's the sample that we will then ultimately take back into the lab, and we'll crush it, and we will get whatever mineral we want out of it by doing a series of complicated steps. Essentially, from a rock that I've crushed down to a small size fraction, I put all of that sand essentially into a liquid that's at a certain density. And so the important minerals that are denser will fall to the bottom of my SEP funnel, and all of the other non-important minerals or things I don't want will float to the top. And so it's a way for me to get a very particular mineral I'm using in my work. Then I can start to calculate how fast this mountain was growing, how fast it took from the time that that mineral formed to when it cooled past a certain temperature gradient to when it was at the Earth's surface. I get to spend 5 to 6 weeks every summer answering those burning questions I have inside of me of why does this certain area look the way it does?
To me, I think the fundamental question of understanding the places that we love and that we want to spend our time, and having sort of a greater appreciation for the planet and all of these amazing processes that have taken millions and millions of years to form these amazing landscapes that we get to spend our time in.
All right, what a beautiful show we're watching. Outdoor Idaho in the shadow of the Bitterroots. We're going to put a pause on it just a second. I'm here with Tina Wright. You're always smiling. How do you do it?
I'm laughing underneath.
And Andy Giacomazzi from the Boise State University School for Public Service, and he brought this whole group of BSU students down here to answer phones tonight. And they're not doing their homework, or this is their homework, so that's a good thing. So we're calling on you tonight to give us a shout at 1-800-980-4788 or go to Idaho PTV. But let's keep these guys busy on the phones. We want to hear from you because your donations your support helps continue bringing you these great shows like Outdoor Idaho in the Shadow of the Bitterroots. So we love to build these shows. The crew you'll hear in just a minute, but this is the focus of what we do. It's our mission, and we're a mission-driven organization, just like BSU.
We were just talking about mission. You know, part of our mission, telling Idaho stories, and then we were talking about how we're tying in your mission with our mission. There's a lot of missions.
Well, I mean, it's a lot about education for all of us, you know, and what you all do is very similar to what we do, because I tell you, our majors, political science, criminal justice, environmental studies. I mean, environmental studies, we're watching a program right now that very much relates to all that good stuff in the classroom with hands-on learning, watching Idaho Public Television.
And that all ties into support. Your support means so much to us for us to make these programs, to bring this educational opportunities to everybody in the state of Idaho, young and old. And it takes not only your viewer dollars, but support from you folks at Boise State coming in and helping us in the studios as well. A lot of different ways you can give. You can kind of see some lists there on your screen. A gift of stock. You can give a vehicle donation. We were talking about that last night. When we say vehicle donation, we mean boats, motorcycles.
Everything. Unless you're using
motorhomes.
Everything. Yep, and that helps.
Running or not, that helps us a lot too. So there's a lot of different ways that you can give. But tonight, if you have an opportunity to give us a call and talk to one of these great students here in the studio, we would sure appreciate it. The numbers on your screen below. You can also text the word GIVE to that same number, or go online to idahoptv.org, and you can see some great thank you gifts kind of going across the screen there. We had those binoculars on the other night. They're really nice, kind of a little mini binocular, very nice brand. Birders. We had a lot of birders call and say, oh, what an awesome, awesome binoculars for birders. So if you're a birder, an ornithologist,
that's
so to speak, it's a great, right?
That's a good Boise State word
tonight.
It's a big word for a Sunday.
I know, right? We have some wonderful thank you gifts. We sure appreciate your support, and we hope that you choose a gift if you call in tonight as well.
1-800-980-4788 is that way to do it. That's so easy. Let's keep these students from Boise State University School for Public Service, School of Public Service.
Either way,
keep forgetting that one. Keeping them busy, because we want to hear from you tonight. Because
close-up of Isaac too. Look at that.
That's a real close-up
of Isaac.
Okay, so which one's Isaac there? One in the front, one in the back.
Caden's working. Look at him.
Oh, okay.
Caden's working,
so
and Isaac's just
answering a call.
Isaac needs to work. He's like, I'm going down like that. Give us a call tonight. I know it sounds like a lot of fun, and we are having fun in the studio. This is fun work to be able to bring you these programs day in and day out, but we do need to hear from you so we can continue that work. This is the last day of this 3-day event, one of the larger on-air fundraising events we have. The largest one is in March, but this is the calendar year end.
And we only come to you 2 times a year.
That's right. So we have somebody else in the
yes,
studio.
we should tease just a little bit. I'll be talking with him in just a few minutes, but there he is, our man, Mr. Fred Choate, is painting. Isn't that beautiful? I think that is Trapper Peak of the Bitterroots. He's painting that. I'm going to be talking to Fred just a little bit later on. I wanted to prime it a little because we have a special painting that he's going to be finishing here and completing in the studio. We will have an opportunity and a special phone number for you to call if you are interested in that painting. But that's just a tease. I'm going to do it a little bit later. Right now, I want to throw it back to Jeff and the OI crew to talk a little bit more about the program.
I have magically stepped 1 foot this way to talk to
there you
Lauren Malink and Jay Krajcik, who's retiring. This is his last effort, his last tribal effort for Outdoor Idaho, Idaho Public Television. What a monumentous career you have had.
One of the prettiest places in the state.
Right here?
No.
Out there.
Your finale.
Yeah.
Your finale was in a pretty good spot.
Finale work. We also have Bill Manny in a distant location talking to us. But first, Lauren, give us a little bit about this show. I mean, you and Jay had been working on the show for a couple of years, not every single day, but it takes time to find the right people, to find the right places, do the research like a journalist would. Tell us a little bit about building it.
Yeah, it's it's one of those things that builds on itself. Yeah, like you said earlier, as you meet someone, they say you've got to go do this, or you've got to go to the Magruder Corridor, or you've got to go to the Hiawatha, and so it suddenly becomes this program that you wish you had 6 hours for because so many things could go in it.
Definitely.
And that's part of why it took a year and a half for us to get to all these places and drive up north and over to Montana to access the Bitterroots. It's just not an easy place to showcase, but it's worth it because it's so beautiful.
Yeah, exactly. And now Bill Manny, Bill's the executive producer of the unit. Bill, we just got done watching the Sunshine Mine documentary that you produced for Idaho Experience, but you kind of oversee everything here. You also get to produce the fun stuff with Outdoor Idaho. Let's climb another peak with Jay before he leaves.
Well, I don't think Jay has mentioned the fact that he finally got to raft the Selway River, which was on his bucket list in order to do this show. And so maybe, talk a little bit about the bucket list items you got to tick off working on this show, Jay.
Now the bucket list, it may sound fun, but it's not fun. Well, it's kind of fun. It's interesting, but you had to work the entire time.
Yeah, but I got to go down the Magruder Corridor twice. Once was just to shoot video, and that was fun.
And Jay,
the second one was fun too, but those guys are really great guys. Yeah, they were fun. They were fun to work with. So.
Jay is a hard worker. There was one point when we were rafting the Selway River. You'll get to that in a little bit, but Jay fell asleep sitting in the water holding a GoPro, and I took a photo of him. He'd been running around all day with the camera, rafting, getting video, climbing hills to get good shots of rafters, and he fell asleep while filming.
I've been known to do that at the end of a long hike, at the end of a long day.
You kind of stop movement, and you just, what else are you going to do? You're going to fall asleep.
You find the perfect sun-baked rock and just curl up.
I'm sure he was still rolling, though, too.
The water was nice.
We've all got,
the water was
Jeff,
cold.
we've all got stories about Jay, and working with Jay is such a remarkable treat and experience and honor.
Yeah, Bill
I
loves
remember standing at dawn to get sunrise at Little Redfish Lake in January, and I remember
freezing all parts
sunsets.
of your body off.
He makes everybody be very still and very quiet. He's very demanding, but he's a real joy to work with. And I'm wondering if Lauren has a special memory or anecdote.
One that you can
that I can say on
share. Yeah, right.
I mean, Jay's just a workhorse. He is going to get every shot, and I'm thinking, we've got every angle of this tractor we can possibly get, and he takes it another level. So he's just a fantastic person to work with and put together a really good show.
Thanks.
Yes.
And Jay, I will miss you also. Our 7 a.m. discussions were always just the best thing. You are such a workhorse, and
you're
such
you can instigate things in that hallway.
Exactly. That how you tie the crew together. I think you're that one commonality, and you don't say no. You just say how far, and you go. And I think that's just amazing. It's a testament for loving your job and loving your career, and you will not soon be forgotten. Well, you will never be forgotten. But because you'll probably come back and do a little
keep seeing that video over and over again.
Well, that's okay because it's beautiful. So we're here tonight so we can have you help us continue these great programs. 1-800-980-4788. Now I do want to actually say one more thing. I inadvertently called the mule
a goat.
A goat.
You can't call him the
really
goat. He's
the
mule.
Mule. Terry Lee carries a lot of Jay's equipment. Now what is the mule going to do after Jay leaves? I think he's still going to be carrying some things.
He's going to carry stuff, and I'm going to carry his stuff for him.
Oh, but I got a nod from Terry. Yeah. Thank you, Terry. So I think right now, Tina, we're going to go over to talk to Tina because Tina has a special guest here. We'll shimmy to the side here with our friend who's always in the studio with us, Fred Choate.
We're playing musical artistry over here, aren't we, Fred?
Oh yeah. Now what I'm doing here tonight is a painting of Trapper Peak, which is the highest mountain in the Bitterroots. And I understand somebody here climbed that.
Very interesting to watch.
You climbed it? Did you both climb it?
Oh, okay. Okay. So I had some good photographs of it, and I just thought this is Trapper Peak on this side, and I'm not sure what the title of that one is, but it'll be a really nice painting when it gets done.
Beautiful, and you frame these so lovely.
Yes, and these will have museum quality frames. It's the same frames I would put on a painting going to a gallery.
Okay, that sounds great. I love that. That's going to be. It's so hard to tell what it's going to be. When you start it that way, and it turns into this most beautiful painting when you're done.
Well, the first thing I do is try to get all of my values in so I can see the depth. And then as soon as I see the depth, then I can start finishing the painting.
I have no idea what you're talking about, but it sounds great. It's like artist talk. It's very important. We'll put it that way. It's so beautiful, and I know that a lot of people look forward to these paintings. So we appreciate you coming in all the time doing this for us. You're kind of our outdoor Idaho artist.
I wouldn't miss this. I wouldn't miss this. I just had heart surgery, so but I'm here.
Look at that. That's some diligence right there. And I want to say that there's on the screen right now. So this painting can be yours for $1,000. It's a special number. You can call right in directly to the studio. Read the number is 208-373-7246. Beautiful, one-of-a-kind, museum quality framed art can be yours if you give us a call with your support us, support Fred.
Now the image size is 16 inches by 20 inches. So then you add about another 3 inches on each side. So add about 6 inches both ways to measure your wall and see if it'll fit.
Perfect. That's beautiful. Thank you so much. I'm going to throw it back over to Jeff really quickly to say goodbye and bring us into the next segment.
All right. Thanks, Fred, and thanks, Tina. So we do want to introduce Terry Lee here. We would keep talking, off camera about this.
This is Terry Lee, the mule.
This is the mule right here. He's not a goat. First, we want to thank Dawson Taylor for keeping us going tonight. Thank you very much, Dawson Taylor. But here's Terry Lee. Terry, you don't have a microphone on. We'll just talk into this.
Talk loudly.
Thank you for being part of the volunteer team.
I love it.
Sounds like Jay might also be that volunteer team.
Yeah,
also.
maybe.
Maybe. But give us a call tonight. We need to hear from you. It's a lot of fun here. We're a family that likes to work together, play together. But you help those programs that these great folks produce come to you. So you make that work happen. So 1-800-980-4788. And again, Dawson Taylor and Qdoba, thank you so much for all your work tonight. I think we're going back to the next segment real quickly.
Yes, you want to? Yes. Do you want to hear what we're going to
Sure.
say? You want a teaser? We're going to get a look
sheep
at some
cheese.
people who make
cheese.
Make
out of sheep
cheese.
milk.
Yep, and then a few people that ride in the Bitterroots, motorcycles, bikes.
Yeah.
And it's a pretty action-packed segment.
Trail work.
Trail work.
All right.
Yeah,
Hang on.
yeah. There's a lot in the show.
Yeah.
Good stuff coming up. Thanks for watching tonight. Here comes the next segment of Outdoor Idaho in the shadow of the Bitterroots.
There are many ways to enjoy the Bitterroot Mountains. And for those who live and work in their shadows, simply looking at the range can be more than enough.
We love the sheep and we love what we do. We enjoy it. But there's some very challenging times. But the best remedy for that is just to walk out here and see those beautiful, majestic mountains, and it just does something. It feeds your soul.
Carol and Randall Stoker are the owners of Mountain Valley Farmstead in Carmen, Idaho.
We make artisan sheep cheese. We milk the sheep. We make the cheese and package the wedges and sell the cheese.
It's just more delicious, more flavorful.
It's a beautiful location in the Salmon River Valley. We're in the valley right between the Salmon River Mountains and the Bitterroot Range. We have a beautiful view of the mountains and the pastures that we live on. And the sun rises and sunsets almost every day. We say, come and look at this, come and look at this. You can't miss this one. Everyone's different and everyone's special. And the same thing with the Green Valley. The Salmon River Valley is a beautiful place to live. Just you're rewarded with beauty every day. We think the sheep like it here as well as we do.
With sheep, I love their personalities. They just make us laugh. They'll just do silly things.
The sheep become almost extended family. They become very special to you. You get to know them very well. It's great working with animals. And then we love being able to have a product that people enjoy.
What do I like about sheep cheese? Everything. It just has so much more flavor to it, and the nutrition. It has probably double the protein, sometimes 3 times the protein in it.
Carol and Randall both have backgrounds in cow dairy, but this was their first foray into sheep's milk, and it took plenty of trial and error to get it right.
There was some times when our faith was tried. Believe me, when we were first starting up and stuff especially, but
We've always loved what we do, but now we've been in it long enough that we think we got all the bugs worked out. We know how to do it well.
I love it all. I do. It's kind of fun. It's a lot of different jobs. I do love milking the sheep, and I love making cheese. I think that's probably one of the hardest, just because it is kind of challenging and got a lot of responsibility on you trying to make the best batch of cheese you can. We just are so blessed. We feel like we were just kind of led here, and I just even told him, I can't even imagine us doing this any other place. We looked at other places, but nothing came through, but this one did, and we just absolutely love where we're at.
To love where you are means to be fully present, to be absorbed in work that provides fulfillment, emotionally and physically, and for some, spiritually. And sweating it out in nature can do that. Just ask the young people who spend their summer clearing trail in the Selway Bitterroot Wilderness.
I was a little nervous coming into this just because, it's 9 days out here with these people and that's it, and the food you brought and that's what you have. Honestly, it's been great. Just completely immersing yourself. Just being out here makes you really appreciate it a lot more and realize how privileged we are just to work out here.
The Selway Bitterroot Frank Church Foundation is an organization with a mission to preserve the natural, pristine character of wilderness.
Congress passed the Wilderness Act in 1964, and the Selway Bitterroot was among the first wilderness areas officially designated in the United States. And so, folks have known that this is a special and important area, and it received that exceptional protection in the 60s.
Each summer, they hire about a dozen college students from across the country to live and work in the wilderness.
The purpose is to support Forest Service capacity in the wilderness. Folks getting out on trails, clearing trails, opening trails, monitoring for wilderness characteristics. And our program helps teach young people this way of life and see if it's something they're interested in doing.
Nice. All right.
Being the third largest designated wilderness in the lower 48, it takes a tremendous effort to maintain trail systems here, especially because chainsaws aren't allowed.
To learn how to use a tool that people 100 years ago used and use it for the same things, it's just really rewarding, I think. And it's a really cool tool too, because it requires being in sync with your partner and also having upper body strength, which I came into this with none, and now pretty strong, so.
It's definitely very rewarding, not only to be there and be sawing through a tree and then finally get through this 2.5 foot wide tree, but also we've had people just hiking the trails who come up to us and say, "Oh, you guys are trail crew? Thanks so much for your work." And just to have that recognition from people definitely kind of warms all of our hearts. Just to be out here in the wilderness doing something I love just makes me feel proud of myself.
The Wilderness Ranger Fellows spend a few weeks training before separating into groups of 3 fellows and 1 leader. Then they'll spend around 8 days working in the wilderness with 4 to 6 days off.
I do like to teach, let them kind of fumble around on their own for a bit, go back, teach again, let them fumble around with each other for a bit. And in my experience, this just seems like a really quick way to get them invested and passionate about the work and also learning the skills to the best of their ability.
For this group, every day of work starts off the same. With a little breakfast
But it's like a sequel to Troll.
and a little warming up.
And it's not a sequel to
I definitely do feel kind of a deeper connection to nature and capital W wilderness, untouched area that has very minimal human impact. It really is something kind of special to me that I think we don't have really enough of, either in America or just kind of the rest of the world, of truly kind of primal areas that don't really have any human influence or anything like that. I really, really value that about this area.
It's a good positive pressure to be able to have that self-willpower to be like, okay, I don't want to wake up but I'm going to because this is going to be a good day and I'm going to make it a good day. And once I get back out there into the woods and I'm looking over the mountain ranges and cutting trees and seeing wildlife and picking mushrooms, it's going to be fun once I get back into it.
It's so worth it. Do this. If you can do this, do it. It's life-changing. I've made like the best friends I possibly could and learned so many cool things. And this organization has just brought a lot to my life that I didn't really know I needed. And now that I'm like, I don't know what I'm gonna do once it's over.
Yep, that's all of them.
You got it?
Ready?
There's more to the Bitterroots than just hard work and history. There's ample space and opportunity for people to just play.
Are you doing yours? Come on.
Beginning with the northernmost end of the range.
All right.
Yeah, the Hiawatha identifies with the Bitterroots, and this is the start of it. From the top end, this is the start of it.
All right, we're going.
The route of the Hiawatha is a former rail line. It came about in the early 1900s when Midwest company Milwaukee Road decided it was high time to expand westward. A challenging feat, building a route through the Bitterroot Mountains.
When they were building all the tunnels, they would work from both sides. And the engineers would try to sit there and make sure that they were working it correctly. So you had a team on the Montana side and a team on the far side, on the Idaho side, both digging through to come together and meet in the middle.
The line was finished in 1909 and was about $200 million over budget. But within a year, a natural disaster would derail everything.
August 1910 was called the Big Burn. It was the largest fire in American history. What was terrible about it is that it consumed 3.5 million acres in the United States and 1.5 million acres in Canada. Unfortunately, the trail opened in 1909. In 1910, they had the fire, and the railroad just watched what was their dream of harvesting all this lumber go up in smoke in 3 days.
After that, the railroad had a series of bankruptcies, reorganizations, and tried to reinvent itself again and again until 1980 when the last train passed through. Then, in 1998, the Bitterroot route reopened for another purpose.
Today, me and my family got together and we all rode the Hiawatha. We went all the way down and then rode the shuttle back up.
Took the old railroad and those areas where the railroad used to exist, a beautiful pathway. And you take out all of the rails themselves or bury the bones and turn it into a trail.
Local business owner Allie Koski and her 2 sons took a ride down the route of the Hiawatha. 15 miles of railroad turned into a hiking and biking trail. And for Allie, it was a first.
I definitely did not expect the first tunnel to be as long and dark and wet as it was. So I'm glad I had a light for that, and also glad I have a change of clothes. But they were beautiful and so cool in temperature, so it was nice to go from the bright sun to the dark tunnels and have that variation on the trail. There's
10 tunnels, 9 that you ride through, and then there are 7 sky-high trestles. And the first tunnel here is 1.661 miles long. That's our longest tunnel. It's the second longest tunnel on the whole path of the Hiawatha.
They were just pitch black. Some tunnels were really short and you didn't really need a light. But the one right there was 1.5 miles long, so you needed a light.
Went through the last tunnel, it gets really wet in there and there's just lots of mud, and I decided to just full speed through this one this time, and that just got mud all over.
The tunnels and the trellises were both really amazing, but what I didn't expect were the little pockets that you could kind of detour off on and turn it into a whole day trip. So you could walk down to the creek or walk up to the trestles and just see little pockets that weren't so common.
Just up the road from the small town of Wallace, the route of the Hiawatha is well known around the world.
Last year, had about 70,000 people ride the trail. In most seasons, we'll have 60 different countries represented and all 50 states and the numerous areas from Canada.
It's weird to think I live not even 30 minutes away, and there's people from all over the U.S. that come here just for this trail.
There are some really rough areas of terrain along the Bitterroots, and that's something that makes it special. I think people come to get away and to enjoy this scenic nature and maybe the quietness and know that their phone's not going to be ringing and things like that. So to me, the Bitterroots is kind of a definition of space. It separates Idaho and Montana. They are a little bit rugged and they're pretty steep. The elk, the deer, the flora, the fauna all kind of comes together.
And I think that people take a lot of pride in it being like our own little corner of the Bitterroot Mountains. And so knowing that it's affiliated with the greater chain, it just is exciting to me to learn that there might be more if I kept traveling down and get to see more that Idaho has to offer.
Depending on who you are, biking the Bitterroots can look very different.
My name is Lance Gines. I'm the owner of Into the Horizon Adventure Motorcycle Tours and Rentals in Boise, Idaho. This segment of motorcycling is called Adventure Touring, and so we're riding big dual sport motorcycles. And so we pack all of our gear for doing 7 to 9 day tours and camp off of the motorcycles.
In this case, Lance and his crew are tackling the Magruder Corridor, 101 miles of undeveloped dirt road that separates the Frank Church Wilderness from the Selway Bitterroot Wilderness. From Elk City, Idaho to Darby, Montana, the road winds through a primitive landscape.
Roads like the Magruder Corridor, to me, is really the iconic adventure touring road of any roads that I've ridden anywhere in the world, because it's difficult, but it's not too difficult. It's not the type that's going to be like, oh my gosh, this is too much, I'm not going to ride this. You just really kind of enjoy it.
For me, like, Father Time is ticking away. So I'm 64 this year, and this level of adventure riding, there's a certain amount of physicality, and I can't do this forever, so I need to do it now.
So I think it's a way for us to kind of get back to, I guess, our wild nature. There's something that about people that I think causes them to seek out adventure, and obviously it's also a way to get away. You get, so many people are in the city kind of wrapped up in the rat race, and you need a break, you need some downtime.
It doesn't take very long on a motorcycle trip for people to really become good friends, because we all have to help each other out and work together. We work as a team.
The Magruder Corridor has an interesting history. It began as the Southern Nez Perce Trail, and over time, trappers and traders began using it. Then, in 1863, Lewiston merchant Lloyd Magruder was returning from Montana when he was murdered by 4 men hired to protect his pack string.
To me, it's just part of the history of the West. There was so much murder that went on back in the early mining days that this was just another one. Back when I first started, the whole thing was very wooded. Unfortunately, through wildfire, a fair amount of the Magruder has burned over the last 15 years or so. But the experience has only changed because the different wildflowers that bloom every year that have been sprung because of the fires and stuff are pretty amazing. Last year, the fireweed was just unbelievable. The whole mountainsides going across here were purple, and they're just absolutely beautiful. The bear grass kind of looks like a very large Q-tip bend or something. It's pretty spectacular for sure. And I think it's fairly unique to kind of this area as well. And I think that it only grows and blooms from time to time. I don't think it's an annual thing. It's kind of cool stuff.
But as they say, beauty is in the eye of the beholder.
The biggest shock for me is it looks like a nuclear wasteland where these fires have come through. The locals, you guys think it's kind of normal, I guess. You see it all the time. Where it's what I think a nuclear bomb went off, and this is the devastation's left. That's what it looks like to me.
It's going good. It's been a good time. Some rocky sections, some loose sections, but it's all good. It's pretty epic. You get up to these high mountain areas. You got these incredible views. You can see for, hundreds of miles.
Just a little bit of everything as far as how mountainous country can be. You get a lot of everything in here. And so I just really appreciate nature in all forms. I mean, that's one of the reasons I love Idaho, is it's so diverse. And we see so many different landscapes all within a single day, you know. But this across here is pretty special and pretty unique.
What a fun tour around the state in the Bitterroots. What a huge area, and what a fun project to work on. Thanks for joining us tonight. I'm here with Lauren Malink and Jay Krajcik. This is Outdoor Idaho Night on Idaho Public Television. We had Idaho Experience before that, and then Dialogue from the Sun Valley Writers Conference before that. This is great local productions because of you. You make these happen because of your calls of support. Speaking of calls of support, we have the Boise State University School of Public Service students in here answering phones. We appreciate them so much, and when you do hear a bell ring, that means what? Close to that. An angel has donated money. You are our angel. So give us a call now at 1-800-980-4788 or text GIVE to that number, and we'll send you a link back. I know that's technical.
Yep,
that's
I know,
very technical.
I know.
Or go to idahoptv.org. So now we want to hear a little more about the Magruder Corridor. You got to do 2 trips.
Twice, yeah.
I have not been there. The Bitterroots is someplace I haven't been. I would love to go. You got to go before me, dang it.
Yeah,
How was it?
It was beautiful. It's a beautiful place. We drove up to Pilot Knob. You need a really big vehicle or a motorcycle or an ATV to get up there. That road is horrible, but the view from up there is just phenomenal.
Wonderful.
Yeah, views on steroids. I mean, it was everywhere you looked. It was just
The things he does to get the good shot.
He's such a hard worker.
The
You
bugs
are
are bad. It was beautiful.
There we go, Lauren. And then you got a little bit of people. You got people in that segment.
Yes, we visited Carol and Randall Stoker, and they have the Mountain Valley Farmstead cheese farm, sheep farm, make
farm.
cheese.
They come to the farmer's market.
Yeah, and I mean, they just
yeah.
appreciate those mountains so much, and that's kind of what this segment showed, is how much these people who are from all different walks of life, how much they love Idaho, and they love that landscape that's so rugged and not an easy place to access.
Yeah, and Lauren, I have seen a cheese plant before, so.
A cheese plant, they grow cheese, yeah.
They grow cheese there.
They grow sheep.
Yeah, they grow sheep.
They grow sheep. The sheep make the cheese.
Yes,
Anyway,
yes.
Thank you so much for joining us.
Like that.
Sounds like we're having a lot of fun here, and we are, but what we really want to hear is your phone calls of support or the click at idahoptv.org tonight, because that's why we're here. This is the last night of Decemberfest. It's a calendar year in on-air support that we need to hear from you. And if you do call in, or if you go online, you can also be thanked with one of these gifts, whether you become a GEM member or a one-time. Either way, these are gifts from us to say thank you for your support. You don't have to take a gift, but these things are kind of cool objects that you can use outside.
Yeah.
So, a little more about what maybe is coming up in this next segment, and then we can read some names.
Yeah, we've got
Trapper Peak.
Trapper Peak, which
Fred
our
is painting
artist
right now.
Fred is
Yes.
drawing. Also have the Selway Crags, which is an interesting trip. It kind of shows how much it takes to get to some of these spots. We ran into a rock slide, a 7-hour drive turned into a 10-hour drive.
The Selway River Road was blocked. We had a landslide on it, so we had to go all the way around.
Through some
and-
Forest
yeah.
Service
I
roads.
didn't hear that one.
Found some new territory.
Nice.
Yeah, so it's never simple,
Yes,
but it's
yes.
worth it
And then
for
the Selway River.
views. Yes.
The Selway River. It finishes off the show.
So tell me a little bit about going forward then. We're having a production meeting coming up here week after next. This is where we sit down and kind of like open up the
Figure out.
idea box and kind of come up with the ideas and see if people want to do the shows, can do the shows, if we have the resources. Speaking of resources, you're helping with those resources by donating your dollars tonight. So what's on the tap? What's on tap?
The big reveal. Well, to start off, we have a show about rodeo that is for sure coming up.
Yep.
That's coming up in March, and that will be, the previews have been fantastic. And then a show about fossils that's coming up a few months after that, and that's going to be awesome. And then after that, we have a couple ideas that we're throwing around.
It's more than a couple. There's 100
There's about
ideas,
there's
right?
a lot of ideas. There's a whole whiteboard full of ideas. So we've got the next 6 years planned out.
Wonderful. So we're going to read a few names if you want to start,
Yeah.
Lauren.
Okay. We want to thank Jan and Brenda Miller from Nampa, Idaho. Thank you so much. And also, Robin Kimball from Nampa, Idaho. Thank you.
And Bill and Gail Thompson from Boise. Thank you very much.
And I have a familiar name here, Lois Blackadar from Salmon, Idaho.
Wow.
Thank you, Lois.
And Sharon Thomas from Twin Falls, Idaho. Thank you very much.
Oh, okay. And I have Joe and Linda Layton from Meridian. Thank you so much for calling in. We've had hundreds of people call in tonight. We'd like to thank you on the air. Oh,
and I have the mule's better half, Wendy Lee.
Speaking of carrying people up the mountain.
Yes. Thank you, Wendy. And Terry, thank you.
Thank you, Terry. So 1-800-980-4788. Give us a call tonight. We want to hear from you before the end of the night. You are the power in our engine. You keep people, our resources out in the field creating these programs for you. So give us a call. Now I'm going to throw it over to Tina and Andy.
We've been waiting so patiently.
Yes, Jeff. Finally.
Good evening. I'm Tina Wright. I'm here with Andy Giacomazzi from Boise State School of Public Service. Wonderful volunteers, the students. You've seen their happy faces.
Yeah.
Loving taking your calls. You hear those bells. Things are ringing. Things are happening. We sure appreciate that. And you know, your help here helps us further our mission to bring public television to everybody in the state of Idaho. And it can go a little bit further with your dollars and with your support as well, Andy.
Absolutely, and we are so glad to be here tonight. And again, give us a call, 800-980-4788. We promise it'll go right here to the School of Public Service students. They're ready to take your phone call and, of course, your contributions to Idaho Public Television.
And, you know, they've been saying we've been interrupting their homework. Do students have homework anymore? Is that a word?
Not on a Sunday night. No, they do have homework.
Oh,
They do.
that's
And you
still
know
a
what?
word?
We're approaching finals, so I want to give them an extra shout out because just in a week from now, they're going through the fall term finals, and they're here all night long with us supporting Idaho Public Television and the School Public Service, and we really appreciate
That makes
them.
me glad I'm not a student anymore. No offense.
I know. No, it's rough.
Remember
It's
that
rough this time of year. Yeah.
I'd rather be here suffering through this. I'm just kidding. It's not suffering at all.
No, this is the best thing ever.
Isn't it?
Yeah, I
We're
love
so
it.
happy that you joined us. Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
I appreciate you coming on and talking with us. And you know, we talked about we're talking about everything local, and how your support helps us produce these local programs. But it's not only that; it's connecting all the communities in Idaho. So through our signals, through our other programming, you know, there's a common thread in all the programming that we have, whether it's a news hour program or Finding Your Roots or a masterpiece program. There's probably a common thread that connects us all throughout Idaho.
And we're one Idaho, especially with everything that's going on these days. We've had so many people from up north in Moscow giving us a phone call tonight. We really, really appreciate your support. We want you to know that we support you as well.
We're sure with you for sure. All of you. It's something that's touched all of us, and we just want you to know that we're still all aware, and we're still our hearts are with you all for that as well.
And the families,
Yes.
which it's still very, very hard.
Yes, it is. So we hope we're all there, and we appreciate you watching tonight. We had our great outdoor Idaho Experience show, which again shows just the resilience of Idahoans and what a great state, what great people we are, and we appreciate all that you guys do for us here at Idaho Public Television, that we can provide these great educational programs.
And we want to keep this going, so you got to call us. We need to hear bells. We need to hear phone calls. 800-980-4788, right over here to the school. And they love to talk, by the way. I've been listening to some phone calls, and they want to learn about you, and I know you've been asking them questions as well. So 800-980-4788.
Yes, please, thank you. And there's some thank you gifts that are going on the screen right now. You don't have to choose one, but we'd love to thank you if you'd like, and we hope that you find some of them useful. There's everything from a collapsible dog bowl to the solar power bank if you're out hiking and your cell phone, you want to catch a great picture and all of a sudden your cell phone runs out of juice.
Oh, the tumblers
you
too.
have that. And the tumblers,
Yeah.
we won't say what they're used for.
No, that's just
Those
for
are
a hot
maybe
drink, of course.
A hot drink, yeah, that's
Just a
it.
hot, like cocoa
Yeah,
or coffee.
hot cocoa. It's a
Of
wonderful
course.
tumbler. It's a hydro flask.
Yes.
So great
Yeah.
tumbler,
Yeah.
wonderful gift, and you can celebrate your support of Outdoor Idaho with one of those, or a great hat. That is kind of styled after the hat of the former star Bruce Reichert, but we thought we'd
Bruce.
update it a little bit with a little bit of a trendier hat that's kind of going with the new way that Outdoor Idaho is going. So you could have
Oh, I love
choose
that
one of those
program.
hat as well.
Mm.
Should we thank a few of the people
Can
who
we?
have called
Yes. We promised shout outs, and we got
We
shout
did.
outs. You want me to go first?
in? Yeah.
I want to say thank you to Bob and Jane Hoff from Idaho Falls. Thank you so much for your contribution. Kathy Wilms giving us a call from Moscow, Idaho. Thank you so much.
I would like to thank Jerry Ann Becker from Idaho Falls. And Jerry Ann wrote in, I love Bruce. We'll miss him. We're glad to see the new Outdoor Idaho. I also would like to thank the student volunteers for all of their hard work. Yay!
All right.
You are appreciated. Thank you very much. And then Robert and Camille Forster from Twin Falls. Thank you.
James and Mary Fogel from Troy, Idaho calling in today. Thank you very much. And then Arthur Yoakum from Payette. Thank you, Arthur.
All around the state. I love hearing that. Melville Fisher from Garden City. Thank you. And let's see, who else do we have here? Jerry Trecartes from Boise. I don't know if hopefully I didn't butcher that too much. Thank you so much for all of your support. We sure do appreciate that. I'm going to throw it back to Jeff for just a little bit, and they can talk about a little more of what happened in the next segments and what you guys have gone through for this great program.
All right, thanks, Tina and Eddie. Great to have you in the studio. Great to have people in the studio to answer those phones at 1-800-980-4788. We appreciate you so much, BSU School of Public Service, for being here. So, okay, we talked about what in that last segment. Now what's coming up in the next segment? There's a little bit of snow coming up.
Yes. We visited Lost Trail Ski Area over on the Idaho-Montana border, kind of north of Salmon. And then we also went to the Chief Joseph cross-country ski area. And got some fantastic, cool video of people skiing and having, skate skiing, classic skiing, downhill skiing. It's a winter wonderland over there, and I had never been until this shoot, and it's awesome.
We did a little cross-country skiing.
Good. That's kind of my.
I think my feet are in one of the shots.
Yes.
So.
Yes, they are.
Yeah, I didn't get credit for that.
You're famous. So now, one thing you're going to be seeing from Outdoor Idaho and all of our productions here is more digital output. So you have been talking about doing a digital series.
Yes.
With one of the new directors, Maya Long, and those are the kind of things where we're going to try to find different audiences. We're not going to ignore the audience that are watching us right now. We're just going to add to those audiences because we want to show more people about what we do here at Idaho Public Television.
Yeah, exactly. I think that there's shorter format shows, and there's little tiny 10-second things. There's all sorts of different ways that we can showcase the work that we do across the state, and that appeals to people who use phones, use computers, use TVs. It gives us a wider range.
And don't worry, we won't shirk our duties. We're going to continue on bringing you these great programs where you want to see them, where you have been watching. We're just going to add to that with a lot of other places. So I'm going to throw it to Tina, who's going to talk to Fred again.
Very, very quickly, I'm going to talk with Fred just a little bit. I wanted to let everybody know that this gorgeous painting has been spoken for by a viewer, but Fred.
If anybody else is interested, I have a lot of comparable paintings in my studio, and I can email you a photograph if you're still interested in a painting. I can make that happen.
Oh, isn't that generous of him? So he has some beautiful paintings, comparable paintings that are framed and gorgeous. I'm going to give you the phone number if you're interested. We'll take down your name and your contact information. We will connect you with Fred, and we can see if you can choose a special painting of his. So the phone number for Fred's paintings is 208-373-7246. Give us a call. That's our bat phone, our Fred phone, I guess we should call it. And we will take your information and put you in touch, and you can have another beautiful painting by Fred Choate. And with that, we're going to go into our next segment, but I do want to just give a quick shout out to City Peanut and Culligan of Southwest Idaho for keeping us hydrated. Thank you for the word. Hydrated and full of snacks. Thank you so much. Enjoy.
The outskirts of the Bitterroots can be just as rugged as the range itself. To the west lay the Selway Crags, a granitic cluster of low-elevation mountains dotted with sparkling lakes. Hard to get to and hard to leave, this isolated landscape offers a sense of solace to its seemingly few visitors.
Going up on those peaks is really spectacular, and you can just see for miles in every direction. It makes you feel unimaginably small. And I think that's what is most important for me, is just you feel so small underneath all of this. And I thought that was fantastic. That's not something that I think you can get any other way.
There's a little bit more risk that you have to consider, so stakes are a little higher, but the payoff and the views are unmatched.
The crags sit south of the Lochsa River and north of the Selway River. The steep mountains, boulder fields, and dizzying drop-offs make for a challenging off-trail hike.
There's really not more than 5 feet of flat ground at a time. Like at any time you were either going downhill or you were going uphill. So something may only be 1.5 miles away or less, but the amount of time that it actually takes you to get there between backtracking, zigzagging down, climbing down stuff, climbing up stuff, trying to find a route where it's not just a sheer drop, 1,000 feet, whatever, it takes a long time to get anywhere.
The mountains don't hold back. They're super steep, lots of deep valleys, but then when you get down into the valleys, they're pretty lush and there's streams, there's still snow melting. It was awesome because we were scrambling across these rocks and then looked down and there's this plethora of grouseberries there. I think the trip took us a little bit longer than we had planned because we kept stopping and having berry breaks, and that's totally fine. Love it.
You see this mountain and you're like, I climbed down that and I climbed up this and I actually went that far. And you can see Montana from where you're standing.
It's an amazing feeling to be hiking and then you get up to the top, you see lakes and waterfalls and valleys, and it's amazing.
From Legend Lake to Legend Peak, to views of Three Links Lake, Cove Lake, and Fen Mountain, hiking in the Selway Crags offers up 360-degree panoramas. And for those willing to get them, an alpine dip awaits at the end of the day.
You can't be at a lake like this and not jump in. We decided the best way to kind of wake up after, the post-hike sleepies is to go and jump in the lake. It felt amazing and wakes you up. There's always a trade-off when you're in nature. Sometimes in order to get those views, you're gonna also have to battle the friendly neighborhood mosquitoes. That was a challenge, but it's still totally worth it. Just come prepared. Wear your bug nets.
I've always wanted to go backpacking. I felt it was a little bourgeoisie maybe, but I'm really grateful that I did. I pulled the trigger, and this is the best place I possibly could have gone for my first time. I mean, it's really spectacular out here.
Now, if you want the mountains, but without the isolation, there's a place to go in the Bitterroots that'll give you just that.
Lost Trail has been around since 1938. That was the first year that people started skiing up here on this pass. It's right on the Continental Divide. We're just on the west side of it, and by being up that high, you get really good snow conditions and good moisture.
Situated north of Salmon and directly on the Idaho-Montana border, Lost Trail Ski Area is known for being affordable and family-friendly.
You kind of get removed from the hustle and bustle. Like, it's a very down-to-earth vibe here. People are going to be super friendly in the lift lines. They're going to say hi to you and treat you nice. And our average snowfall is around 300 to 325 inches a year. I fell in love with Lost Trail, being able to ski, the type of terrain it has, and the snow quality is really nice and it's consistent. We have 1,800 skiable acres. We have 5 chairs and 3 rope tows, which one of them counts the bunny hill. There's great beginner terrain here. We have good intermediate, and then we have, some really gnarly terrain for the people that want to come get extreme. And we have the snow to support all of it, and it's awesome.
1 mile down the road from Lost Trail is Chief Joseph Pass, named for Chief Joseph of the Nez Perce tribe. Also located on the Idaho-Montana border, the area has become a playground for winter enthusiasts.
Chief Joseph Pass is a free cross-country ski area. We operate off of grant funding and donations that's managed by the club as well as in a partnership with the Forest Service, and then the contracts out with Lost Trail across the way. Most people that are willing to come out this far are out to just kind of enjoy the day, and it seems like there's a lot less tension and conflict when you get a little more space to yourself. Today we were skate skiing. It's just been kind of a hobby that you can carry on into any stage of life just because it's so low impact, and there's just something that gets addicting about moving that fast on snow. But we do oscillate between this discipline and then also the more traditional, what we call classic skiing. And we have a good sampling of both of those types of skiers up here at Chief Joe. It's something a little bit meditative that kind of like just bringing all of your attention, because you are moving so fast. And I mean, if you look at these things, there's not much there to stand on. Just the requirements for balance and flow, and when you start to hear the snow kind of crunch under there, it kind of dampens out all the sound. It forces you to focus. It just forces you to just kind of come into yourself, and it just really restores your peace. At least it does for me.
With a mountain range splitting 2 states, the best way to access the grandest views of Idaho's Bitterroot Mountains is by climbing Montana's tallest Bitterroot Mountain, Trapper Peak.
We can see up the Bitterroot Valley all the way to Missoula, really, and we could see farther if it was not so hazy today. We could actually see all the way to the Mission Mountains, 100 miles north of here. And we have the length of the Bitterroot Range right here, and then all around us we have all these surrounding mountain ranges, the Pioneers and the Beaverheads in southwestern Montana, the Bighorn Crags in Idaho, and I think we could probably see the Selway Crags if I were to turn around. Just a fantastic view.
Over 10,000 feet, Trapper Peak rises above Montana's Bitterroot Valley, tempting seasoned hikers with its lofty summit.
This was something that we've been looking forward to doing at the end of the season for 3 months now, and so actually being able to do it and completing it is amazing. It's a little nerve-wracking. I am a little afraid of heights. The bouldering and Screefield are definitely not in my comfort zone, but it's fun. It's fun to challenge myself like that.
My knees hurt and I'm really tired, but it's very nice to be up here.
It felt pretty rewarding once I got to the little geological marker and seeing the 10,157 feet. It's like, yeah, I finally did it. Highest I've ever been for sure, yeah. I live at 400 foot elevation my entire life, so coming up to 10,000, I was like, that's kind of scary, but it wasn't so bad, and I'm finally here.
While the top is certainly the destination, the journey to it is equally breathtaking.
There's hundreds and hundreds of alpine lakes in the area, and of course they were scoured out by the glaciers. We went by a few on the way up, and they're pretty spectacular places, and they're usually separated by waterfalls because they're in hanging valleys that were created by the glaciers. On the way up, we talked about these alpine larches, and they're deciduous conifers. In other words, they have needles, and they lose their needles in the fall every year, and they turn a brilliant gold color, and they're just beautiful. And they grow up high, sort of at the upper limits of trees. They're really close to the timberline, and I think that they live for a really long time, like more than 2,000 years.
As part of the Selway Bitterroot Wilderness, Trapper Peak and the surrounding land have loyal defenders who believe in the value of the land in its untouched state.
The wildlands aren't just important for us, they're important for all the ecosystems, the plants and animals. I think it's really important to preserve as much of it as we can, and that seems to be getting harder and harder. But we keep trying to preserve things. We don't always win battles, but I think, as someone said, it's not the battles that you lose that are so bad, it's the battles that you don't fight.
From the snowy peaks of the Bitterroot Mountains comes runoff. Destined for the Selway River.
Yes.
For me, as a river guide, as an outfitter on the rivers are the arteries. It's the lifeblood of any mountain range.
The Selway is a 100-mile stretch of free-flowing water that winds through pristine land that's only been tarnished by nature itself.
It's a place of solace, but it can also be a place of endorphins and rushes. It's a protected and restricted river corridor. It transforms from one ecosystem to another. Wildlife, greenery, so much, wildflowers. It's hard to put to words, honestly.
Rafting the Selway River feels remote, and that's because it is. Running through the heart of the Selway Bitterroot Wilderness, isolation and serenity are common themes for those lucky enough to spend a few days here.
There's something really special about being able to sit and just have it be the natural world kind of enveloped in it. Definitely a lot of, self-thinking. Being able to wake up in the morning and sit next to a campfire with like a cup of coffee, just like in the quiet, hearing the rushing waters is really kind of incredible, as simple as it is.
And this feels good. Something just resonates with them again. And it's like rekindling something that's lost in their heart, right?
Tucked within wilderness, the Selway River was uniquely protected in 1968 as a national wild and scenic river. Only one raft group is allowed to launch each day, and few permits are handed out each year.
I think it's amazing that people had the forethought to protect these landscapes, and I'm really grateful for that. And when you're out here, you understand like this could look a lot different if we didn't do that. So I think wilderness is crucial. This landscape, really steep canyons, rolling mountains, just that classic Idaho character of steep ups and downs and big canyon walls. You go through some older growth forest, some burnt forest. That I think lends itself to understanding the wild character of this landscape and the natural regime of the ecosystem.
You have your firs and your pines, but you see outcroppings of your northwestern cedar, which we were spotting today, and wildlife and birds.
It's just incredibly lush, tons of cedars and yews and lovely little flowers everywhere. And it's also just frigging full of butterflies. I've never been on any river outside of the tropics that had remotely this many butterflies.
Whether you're a guide and you've seen it a dozen times, or a guest on your first Selway outing, the romance of this wild river is undeniably present.
I think it's important for us to have space where we can go and disconnect from the concrete jungles of society and enjoy the landscapes that humans were, meant to enjoy. It's been so amazing to watch the landscapes change so much since we first put in this really narrow, shallow river with pretty heavily wooded areas behind us. And then today we went through like some really tight, narrow canyons with big rock walls around. It's just been so awesome to just watch it all go by. It's like a never-ending wallpaper out here.
And forward two.
But make no mistake.
There we go.
The river's reputation as one of the best whitewater runs in the United States is well deserved.
When the river is high, it's very big and very pushy, and you have to be absolutely on your toes and really knowing how to navigate big, powerful whitewater and punch through big, powerful features. And then when it is low, there's a lot of rocks out there. So it becomes just this technical Tetris mind game.
All forward.
The proximity of those rapids and the characteristics really define the Selway, because at high flows, recovery space is minimal. It's that moose juice, is that crux right there after the confluence that gets people's hackles up, you know, when they want to make sure they understand the flows, know where they're at, and best knowledge of what's to come and the skill set.
Just something about being out in the glory of this very big, complicated thing and having a great time by learning to play by Mother Nature's rules. Like that classic thing, you play by the rules, you get to hang out at the party, you know, and it's an incredible party to get to hang out at.
While white-knuckled rapids might be what some people come for, what they leave with can mean so much more.
Out in the quiet woods with my family, enjoying time together, and also just enjoying time doing things together, maybe just as importantly or perhaps more so.
It's been obviously the craziest rafting I've ever done, and like the most exciting, but also very relaxing at the same time, because like the water feels great and the company is even better, and then just, yeah, it's just, there's nothing quite like it. Nothing quite having your problems just flow down the river with you.
It's been so fun and so silly. Like everyone is just having a great time fishing or hiking or just riding along in the boats, and it's just been laughing, sit around the campfire at night. It's just, yeah, it's been a dream.
I've been on river time, and then there's Selway river time. It's just a different time and a place. That river sparkles green, and you're swimming in it, and you feel the sand in between your toes, and watch that river go by. It's very magical. It's sacred. It just gets in your heart. It gets in your soul. It inspires you. It takes you to a different place. The Bitterroot Mountains, the Selway River, you got to feel it to understand it. You got to live it to understand it.
Funding for Outdoor Idaho is made possible by the Laura Moore Cunningham Foundation, committed to fulfilling the Moore and Bettis family legacy of building the great state of Idaho, by the Friends of Idaho Public Television, by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, and by the Idaho Public Television Endowment. To find more information about these shows, visit us at idahoptv.org.
That was a gorgeous show.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tina.
I love that. We were just talking about what it takes to make these programs, and Jay was like, I shot that. We were just driving through there. We were going through there, and I'm like, what? You did what? Where? It's a lot.
Some of them are easy, some of them are hard.
Yeah, I appreciate that they go through what they go through so that I can see it on the screen, because there are so many beautiful places in Idaho that I'm not able to go, and I would rather watch it on TV than experience it. I know it's probably the opposite for you guys, but there's a lot of people who like to just look at it from their couch.
Yeah.
So we appreciate what you guys do to make these beautiful programs, and we appreciate you for your support allowing us to make these programs for all of the state of Idaho, for everyone here to enjoy. So thank you so much. You know, there's still time to call in. We are here with the Boise State School of Public Service students. They are giving up their homework time. It's almost finals, and they're here to talk to you and take your call. So please do give us a call. We have a couple people to thank, and then we want to talk about a special offer we have for something from Jay Krejcik.
I'll go first.
You go
Okay.
first.
Thanks to Mary Caldwell of Payette, Idaho. Thank you so much. And also Janice Poole of Lava Hot Springs, Idaho. Thank you very much.
All over the state.
And I have Ronald, and I'm going to hope to say this right, Mizi from Idaho Falls. Thank you very much. And Mike Coffey and Belle Craig from Boise. Thank you.
And I would like to thank Edith and Jana Wiedemann from Ketchum. Thank you so much for calling in and for your support. We sure do appreciate it. And you can see some thank you gifts on the screen. We hope that we have picked some nice things that you might be able to use in your outdoor adventures. If you'd like to choose a gift for your donation, we would be happy to send you one. You don't have to, but if you'd like to, we would love to take care of you. So please give us a call, 1-800-980-4788, or you can go online to idahoptv.org. And now we want to talk about a special print. Jay took this shot. We're going to bring it up on the screen here, and it's a special print that we have. It's a beautiful print that we've printed on a metal.
Yeah.
20 by 30. Tell us a little bit about how you took this. By the way, Jay is retiring, so we're probably not going to have a whole lot of Jay's prints to offer.
I can go take some more now.
Well, maybe.
Yeah.
That's true. Tell us a little bit about what was behind this one. It's gorgeous.
It was morning. This is a morning shot before the sun hit the flowers, and it's sometimes softer light. The flowers pop a little bit better instead of just really harsh sunlight. So.
And where was this taken?
It's kind of down by Powell Ranger Station.
Where's that?
Up towards Lolo Pass.
Okay, Lolo Pass.
Up near there. Yeah.
Beautiful. And so were you on a shoot and it just woke up?
I think I had heard about it, or I had seen it or something, and I kind of knew that they were blooming, and so I went out and camped out the night before and got up the next morning and photographed it.
I love it. It's beautiful. If you'd like to have a copy of this, it's at 20 by 30. It's on metal, so it doesn't need to be framed. You could frame it if you wanted it to, but standalone, it's just absolutely gorgeous. If you would like this for a $1,000 donation, give us a call. We have a special phone number at the bottom. It's 208-373-7246, and we would love to thank you for your donation with that beautiful print of Jay's. And he might even sign it if you ask him nicely, so we can boost up the value of that. Can't we now?
Yeah, right.
Jay's signature.
Thank you guys again, though. What a beautiful show. I look forward to more shows that you guys are working on. Well, not you, because you're retiring.
Yeah.
Oh.
I know.
Right? We're like, oh.
I know. I have to consult him for where to go, places, maps.
Right.
He's the guy.
He is.
He's the
But
expert.
Lauren, looking forward to your new fresh face of Outdoor Idaho as we move forward in this great state of ours. We appreciate that. I'm going to throw it over really quickly to Jeff and a couple of folks that we have guests in the studio as well.
All right, thanks, Tina. I'm here with Andy Giacomazzi from School for Public Service,
Hi, Jeff.
BSU. How are you?
Good, thank you.
Good. You've been here all night. So we had to bring in reinforcements.
I love it.
This is Angie Boss, the new dean of the School of Public Service at Boise State University. Thank you for being here tonight.
Absolutely.
We thank you too, Andy, but
I know who you'd like better. It's fine.
tell us a little bit about yourself. You're a new Idahoan.
I am. I've been in Idaho 4 months now.
Wonderful.
And came here from Ohio, Northeast Ohio, outside Cleveland. And before that, Minnesota. Grew up in Minnesota.
Okay, so Ohio, Iowa, Idaho. You've already kind of fallen into that trap.
That's right. That's right. Moved here from Ohio. Grew up on the border of Iowa.
Okay.
So I have all of the states in the confusion as a part of my life.
Wonderful. Well, thank you for being here tonight. It's not too confusing here. Call 1-800-980-4788. Darn it, I just took Andy's work right there. Andy, go ahead and say it. You can do it.
Jeff, again, please let me do my job. 800-980-4788. We'll get you right back to the School of Public Service students who are ready to take your phone call, your contributions, Jeff, and we appreciate it. We're hearing some phone calls right now, but it could get a little bit more busy, actually.
It could get raucous in here. I just love it when you guys are in the studio. It's so much fun.
We love to be here.
Or you can go to idahoptv.org.
Sure.
Or if you text the word give to that number, we'll shoot you a link back and you can make a donation that way. So we make it easy. There are so many ways to give to Idaho Public Television, but when you do give, know that your donations, your pledges of support, go to these great programs that we're producing that we brought to you tonight. We want to thank Qdoba Mexican Eats. Thank you so much for creating some sustenance for us. And Outdoor Idaho, you saw that. Now we're going into James Taylor, one-man band. This is a great nationally produced program. You've seen it all tonight, history, outdoors, great interviews with award-winning writers on Dialogue, Sun Valley Writers Conference. with Anthony Dorff. Now we're going to a great musical performance. So thank you for being here, Angie. There'll be more, don't worry. And thank you, of course, Andy, for being here.
Absolutely, Jeff.
All right, the last night of Decemberfest, we want to hear from you.